Hey truckers, here is part 3 of the guide to conquering Earthlings. Xiaqing seemed pushed to his limit. Lan Shi, can you stop having this on your mind all the time? What is going on with you? Lan Shi blinked her eyes and glanced at the sky outside, still a bit unwilling. Can I just take a short nap? She clasped her hands together and pleaded, please, even just for a minute, in the simplest position. Lan Shi thought that simply lying down, even for just a minute, would be considered a shared bond of sleeping together. Unfortunately, Xiaqing completely misunderstood her words. He raised his voice slightly, expressionless, and asked, 1 minute? Just 1 minute? What do you mean? Confused, Lan Shi replied, it's fine even if it's a short time. I don't mind. The important thing was to sleep together. But for some reason, Xiaqing seemed infuriated. Feeling a bit wronged, Lan Shi couldn't help but mutter, I didn't do anything wrong. It's all written in the guidebook. Guidebook? Xiaqing took 3 deep breaths, seemingly controlling his emotions, and his voice became calm again as he looked at Lan Shi. What guidebook? Oh no, she slipped up. Lan Shi blinked her eyes and tried to cover up. It's a guide left by my family, a guide to surviving in modern society. The guide tells you to sleep with me? Not that explicitly. It just says that if a woman sleeps with a man, she can get money. Lan Shi stammered, since I owe you so much money, the guide says that after sleeping together, I don't have to repay the debt. Xiaqing pursed his lips, his expression serious. And what about the sleeping position? Is that also mentioned in the guide? Well, there's a section in the guide that specifically talks about sleeping positions. Lan Shi didn't want to say too much. While observing Xiaqing's expression, she carefully chose what she felt was safe to say. But it's very simple. I often practice these positions, so I already know them without having to refer to the guide. At this point, she glanced at Xiaqing again. Anyway, let's just practice directly. If there's anything you don't know, I can teach you. She spoke casually, unaware that her words had caused a huge uproar in Xiaqing's ears. Xiaqing had read Lan Shi's resume, and she was outstanding in various aspects. However, her family background was the only drawback. Not only did she come from a remote mountain village, she was also abandoned by her parents when she was young and grew up in a welfare institution. She only managed to complete her education with the help of kind-hearted individuals. Xiaqing's gaze shifted to Lan Shi. There was no denying that she was astonishingly beautiful, physically fit, and he had personally verified that her analytical abilities far surpassed those of ordinary people. A child like her, who had been abandoned bit by bit since a young age, must have displayed abnormal social behavior. Life in a welfare institution couldn't have been good, he presumed. But Xiaqing didn't expect it to be this bad. Not poking into someone's sad past was basic morality, so Xiaqing tactfully avoided using the term welfare institution. He furrowed his brows and asked for confirmation, so, the person who left you that survival guide, is your family, the people who take care of you in daily life? Xiaqing attempted to use phrasing that wouldn't lead to misunderstandings, even if it meant referring to autism. Your family, is it a large family? Like one with many children, around 1 or 200, something like that? Lan Shi nodded her head. The Earthling Conquest Guide was written by a team of experts appointed by her father and mother, so it was essentially a gift from her own family. Mui Star adopted a cultivation chamber for reproduction, allowing for the convenience of cultivating as many children as desired. As a result, Lan Shi had numerous blood relatives. There were nearly 200 members of the royal family alone who were related to her by blood, whether closely or distantly. It truly was a large family with many children. Lan Shi simply nodded in response to this question, but Xiaqing's heart was filled with shock and tumult. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. In today's society, a family with 1 or 200 children could only be a welfare institution. Xiaqing was aware of the difficulties that individuals with autism spectrum disorders faced in integrating into society, as well as the malice they encountered. However, he had no idea that this malice could be so severe. Many women used their beauty as a weapon, but for someone like Lan Shi, who had autism spectrum disorder, her extraordinary beauty was not a good thing. Xiaqing had heard of many welfare institutions in remote areas that not only had infrastructure issues but also had varying degrees of staff quality. In some mountainous welfare institutions, which were far removed from the central government's reach, there were even many loopholes in the adoption of infants and young children. There were significant problems in the care provided by the staff to these children who lacked parental protection. This was actually a global issue. In many countries, even official children's welfare institutions and social shelters were involved in illegal activities. In countries where the system was insufficiently regulated and there was insufficient public attention, there were numerous gray industry chains involving the coercion of underage children into prostitution. Clearly, Lan-Shi was not fortunate. It was evident that the welfare institution she was in had significant ulterior motives in raising her. She was too beautiful and too easily controlled and deceived. Xiaqing did not want to believe it, but based on Lan-Shi's consistently peculiar behavior and the guide she mentioned, this was probably the worst possible scenario he could imagine. Lan-Shi was likely being manipulated and deceived into providing sexual services to others, and she had been brainwashed to believe that this was a very normal and common phenomenon, which was why she shamelessly spoke of sleeping together and knowing many sleeping positions. The strange behavior she exhibited on a daily basis probably had a further explanation now. So, it turned out that behind these bizarre actions was a logical behavior pattern. Yes, as an individual with autism spectrum disorder, she often could not understand human emotions well, could not discern goodwill, and could not avoid traps and malice. It was likely that she had been educated to serve others sexually, and her living environment was perilous. To be able to receive money by sleeping with men, to speak so confidently about it, and even openly display a banner saying they could sleep together, how much hellish existence had she experienced? Even her common sense had been altered and manipulated by this group of people. Perhaps Xiaqing sent her here with many such thoughts in mind. However, Lan-Shi didn't even know what she had been through. She had a carefree expression on her face and sneakily glanced at Xiaqing, her voice filled with regret and unwillingness. "Are you really not considering sleeping with me? It's very comfortable." Lan-Shi was actually feeling a bit tired. She longed for sleep because for the Mui star people, eating and sleeping were the two main ways to replenish energy. If she couldn't have a proper meal, then she would sleep more, and if she couldn't sleep well, then she would eat more. But now she neither had a satisfying meal nor a good night's sleep, and she was indeed fatigued. She really missed the sweet embrace of slumber. After all, waking up from a good sleep, fully replenished with energy, was not only comfortable but also refreshing. However, she didn't bring it up, but as soon as the topic of sleep was mentioned, Xiaqing's expression became complicated. "You don't need to sleep anymore. You don't have to sleep like this," he said. "Huh? This can't be right. How can one not rest or sleep?" Lan-Shi wanted to explain, but Xiaqing's next words made her completely forget about saying anything else. "As for the money, you don't have to repay it. You don't have to sleep with me either. No, you can't sleep with me, and in the future, don't even think about such messy things." Xiaqing's voice was very solemn. "Money and sleep cannot be equated, and you must promise me not to sleep with anyone for money, understood?" Lan-Shi was overjoyed. "So, if I don't sleep with you, I don't have to repay the money?" "Yes," Xiaqing nodded and said in a deep voice, "and I don't want to sleep with you either. Don't even think about it. Don't worry. I absolutely won't think about it." Lan-Shi was elated, but she felt something poking her waist again, causing some discomfort. Unable to bear it, she complained, "Didn't you take the umbrella away? Why is the handle still here?" "Well, forget it." Taking matters into her own hands, she just needed to remove the umbrella herself since Xiaqing was too lazy to take it away. But as soon as Lan-Shi's hand touched the umbrella handle, Xiaqing reacted dramatically, almost jumping up in shock. "What are you doing?" he exclaimed. Seemingly astounded, Xiaqing's voice even changed. "Lan-Shi, where are your hands touching?" Almost instantly, both of Lan-Shi's hands were restrained by Xiaqing. "I was just planning to throw your umbrella under the bed." "Why would you put an umbrella handle on the bed?" Lan-Shi didn't understand. She just wanted to remove the umbrella from the bed, so why did Xiaqing's expression become so hostile? Luckily, I acted quickly. A moment later, Xiaqing's face still showed remnants of fear, and he looked at Lan-Shi with a complex expression. "Otherwise, if you had thrown the umbrella off the bed with your strength, I would be in the hospital right now." But after a while, Xiaqing cleared his throat and continued, "I had no intention of doing anything with you. It was simply because the things in the soup had overdosed me." As he spoke, he averted his gaze and stared elsewhere. "In any case, those things you thought about before are impossible." Xiaqing paused, then seemed to remember something and asked cautiously, "Is there anything in the guidebook about sleeping?" Lan-Shi thought for a moment. It says that after sleeping, the man will take responsibility for the woman. That's such an outdated mindset. Xia Cheng's voice sounded perplexing. Then, he spoke seriously, there's no benefit in sleeping with someone. If you sleep with someone and get paid for it, it's illegal. In modern society, there are plenty of people who are irresponsible after sleeping together. Some men even have diseases, and if you sleep with them, you might get infected, and treating some diseases can be very troublesome. The era of being responsible after sleeping together, which was prevalent in the past, has long been gone for at least a decade. This is unbelievable. Lan Shi was genuinely surprised. Xia Cheng's words were truly enlightening. Indeed, why didn't she think of it? It's already 2023 on Earth. The 2003 edition of the Earthlings Guide to Conquest is already 20 years old. It seems like it's time for an update and revision. Look, a lot of the knowledge has become outdated. As for those positions you mentioned, forget about them. Regarding Xia Cheng's request, Lan Shi felt a bit hesitant. If I forget about the positions, how am I supposed to sleep? Besides, I enjoy researching various sleeping positions on weekends. I like to innovate in terms of positions. Sleeping and eating are equally important for the people of Mui Star, and Earth has so many good things. Lan Shi just bought a reclining sofa that offers many comfortable sleeping positions. She was planning to explore it over the weekend. Unfortunately, in response to Lan Shi's question, Xia Cheng raised his voice, looking very angry. Can't you think about something else? What's wrong with not sleeping with someone? Or do you have an addiction in that aspect? Develop some normal interests and hobbies. Lan Shi actually had many doubts, but seeing Xia Cheng's expression, she decided to keep quiet. One who knows the current trends is a wise person. At this point, there's no need to ask anymore. As long as she doesn't sleep with Xia Cheng, everything will be fine. Isn't that easy? Lan Shi was confident that she could do it. You are not allowed to sleep with me or touch me, understood? After receiving her repeated assurance, Xia Cheng returned to the floor, clutching the blanket. Lan Shi watched as he laid out the bedding and then lay down on his side. Before long, Xia Cheng fell asleep. However, Lan Shi gazed sadly at the shadows cast by the trees outside the window, her eyes wide open. Since she promised not to sleep with Xia Cheng. And now that Xia Cheng was asleep, she couldn't sleep either. She stared at Xia Cheng, who was sleeping peacefully on the floor, and couldn't help but think that Earthmen could be so heartless. But since she couldn't sleep, Lan Shi didn't idle either. She thought for a moment, took out her phone, and entered a search keyword. If an Earth male says he doesn't want to sleep with you, the Earth's internet is truly limitless. After a moment, the answer Lan Shi wanted appeared. Because he can't. Lan Shi remembered Xia Cheng's teaching and did not sleep with him all night. Although she did not know what exactly was meant by cannot do it, but cannot as a negative word must not be good. Additionally, multiple sources indicated that when a male cannot do it, it would prevent males and females on Earth from sleeping together. No wonder Xia Cheng refused this way. Lan Shi studied passionately all night and deeply understood how miserable it was for a man who cannot do it. The materials stated that on Earth, a man who cannot do it hurts his self-esteem greatly. It would cause low self-esteem for a male. More possibly it would lead to eccentric, irritable and moody personality. For men who cannot do it, the most important thing is to protect their fragile self-esteem. Never take initiative to bring this topic up. At all times, look for other strengths of this man and give him compliments and praises. Let the man feel adored again and rebuild his confidence. Of course, for some men, cannot do it is just a temporary psychological problem or maybe because they suffered a blow for the first time, causing stress about this matter. For those men with no physical problems, once they are in a fiery circumstance, giving them encouragements and guidance moderately, they totally have the hope of changing from cannot do it to success. Fiery circumstance. Again, fiery circumstance. Lan Shi somehow understood that this fiery circumstance seems an awesome good thing. She forgot to try it last night. What a pity. But luckily there was still chance to remedy this. Once Lan Shi decided, she went to chop trees in the backyard, then started to chop firewood. The stove that can burn firewood was right outside the room Xia Cheng slept. Lan Shi tried several times but the fire could not start because of the wind. Finally she closed all the doors and windows before successfully starting the fire. This room was previously used as a warehouse, so although the stove was built, it had always been abandoned without using. Therefore even the ventilation pipes were not fully constructed. After Lan-Shi closed doors and windows, all the smoke was trapped indoors. Even Lan-Shi coughed a little because of the smoke. She looked at the vague room filled with smoke and wondered, could this be the circumstance of fiery? Very blurry, so very attractive? Anyway, one could barely see anything clearly with all the heavy smoke. This atmosphere should be it, right? Thinking this way, Lan-Shi went towards Xia Cheng's room. But the scene Lan-Shi imagined where Xia Cheng invited her to sleep together vibrantly did not happen. On the contrary, Xia Cheng lay on the floor without moving at all. It looked like he really could not make it. Lan-Shi was about to leave when she heard Xia Cheng's faint voice. Lan-Shi, are you here? Come over. Xia Cheng's coughing in the thick fog already sounded, breathing heavily. I cannot hold on any longer. In Lan-Shi's mind, it was not cannot hold on any longer. You just simply cannot make it. But after some thoughts, Lan-Shi still comforted sympathetically, it's fine if you cannot make it. It won't necessarily always be like this in the future. After intense coughs, came Xia Cheng's resentful voice with his last bit of strength, I'm dying. Before Lan-Shi could understand what was happening, she quickly found Xia Cheng and grabbed his hand. Although Lan-Shi did not have the experience of Earthling's birth, aging, sickness and death, she had watched many TV dramas and was very experienced with such scenes, able to handle them smoothly. She said deeply, so is there anything you want to say as the last words? Go ahead and I am listening. I will accompany you to go through the last moment of your life. Don't worry, and this moment will not be lonely. As she spoke, Lan-Shi tried to close Xia Cheng's eyes as she learned from TV dramas. Unfortunately, Xia Cheng was not cooperative at all. Whenever Lan-Shi tried hard to close his eyes, Xia Cheng struggled to open them again. Close, open. Close, open. Thinking for a bit, Lan-Shi suddenly understood thoroughly. You must have some injustice, so you do not want to close your eyes. Then speak it out and I will bring you justice. This time, under Lan-Shi's anticipation, it looked as if Xia Cheng finally gathered the strength of fighting back death. His voice was almost gritting teeth. I have not died yet. Open the window for ventilation. Which idiot burnt firewood in the abandoned stove? Xia Cheng panted heavily, cursing fiercely, enclosed space without air circulation, incomplete combustion of firewood, I almost had carbon monoxide poisoning. Luckily Lan-Shi brought Xia Cheng out of the room quickly. She opened windows, put off fire and Xia Cheng soon recovered, though still coughing due to smoke irritation. From the villager's words, Lan-Shi finally realized if she had been a bit later to pull Xia Cheng out, he could have died from carbon monoxide poisoning indeed. The carbon monoxide not fatal to Mui star people turned out to be so dangerous for Earthlings. Doesn't that make me your life savior? Lan-Shi flicked her hair with some surprise and asked carefully, so according to norm, can I propose some compensation plans? Let me think. Xia Cheng glanced at Lan-Shi expressionlessly, no need to think anymore. Could Xia Cheng already have something in mind to repay her favor? Lan-Shi felt a little embarrassed, it's no big deal to save you casually. You don't have to sell out everything to repay me. Giving me 1/3 of your property will do. Is 1/3 enough? Lan-Shi was overjoyed. She reconsidered, or we can do half, or 1/10. 1/10 divides pretty fairly too. But instead of responding to her proposal, Xia Cheng shifted the topic oddly. I saw in news yesterday. 2 men dug up their boss's ancestral grave, preparing to help their boss find his ancestors' remains when the boss discovers his ancestral grave was dug up. By owing them this favor, they aim to get promotion and salary increase from the boss. Xia Cheng glanced at Lan-Shi, I had always thought it was fake news. How could there be such people in this world? Isn't that abnormal thinking? But now it looks like it should be real. Lan-Shi, did you also get inspiration from that news? Xia Cheng said expressionlessly, first you burnt firewood in the stove, closed all doors and windows tightly until I almost died from poisoning. Then you popped up to complete the achievement of becoming my life savior. And finally you expected favor in return? Xia Cheng was astonished, how could you still ask for compensation shamelessly? Lan-Shi mumbled, I saw the saying only the daredevils win, so I just gave it a try, it's not illegal to just try. Xia Cheng felt a headache. Last night out of sympathy he had just called the HR department to suspend the recruitment process and decided to keep Lan-Shi without getting someone else to replace her. At least working for him, Lan-Shi could have considerable income. And Xiaqing could also consciously correct some of her inappropriate perspectives to pay attention to her living environment so that she would not fall back into the previous situation of selling her body to earn a living. She looked short of money, so let her take up assistant and bodyguard roles. Although her mind was not too normal, her nature did not look bad. But looking at the shameless lively Lanshi in front of his eyes now, Xiaqing truly regretted. This girl was truly toxic. The toxicity was too strong. It would probably take Xiaqing much more effort than he imagined to reshape her values. While Xiaqing was thinking about Lanshi was also thinking about Xiaqing in her mind. They already had the fiery circumstance, yet he still could not make it. He probably really could not do it after all. During breakfast, Lanshi overheard Xiaqing telling villagers that he would see the village doctor after the doctor came back. He probably also realized his own problem and wished to treat it. Xiaqing was so pitiful. He had been hiding the secret of impotence. She must protect the last dignity for him as a man. Before finishing breakfast, Lanshi could not refrain herself. I will definitely keep your secret and won't tell anyone, even not your oldest uncle. Lanshi bit her lips and said in a low voice, you can rest assured. But sympathy did not work. Sympathy also could not realize her plan to sleep together. Additionally, the guidebook said if they could not sleep together, they could develop platonic spiritual romance instead. Lanshi closed the guidebook again and decided to draw up a new battle plan. But just as she was about to go out, she was stopped again by the ant she had met last night. The ant whispered, how did it go last night? Did you succeed? No success. Lanshi felt a little frustrated and admitted honestly, I didn't sleep all night. However, the ant was stunned for a moment, then covered her mouth and laughed, after all, you are full of youthful passion. It looks like the deer whip I gave you was effective. I heard that the bed collapsed. The whole village already knows about this. I didn't believe it at first, but now I do believe it. I secretly sneaked into your room just now to take a look. The bed really collapsed. You young people. She moved closer to Lanshi, he must be in a good mood after eating his fill last night. He will also be nicer to you. But you can't indulge a man too much. You have to let him go hungry every now and then, make him able to see the food but not eat it. That way, he won't be able to live without you. Understand? Is being hungry once enough? Lanshi's question made the ant laugh again. She winked and said, of course the more you can starve him, the better. Just make sure he doesn't go stealing food when he's hungry. However, when starving him, you need a valid reason, a passable excuse. You can't just outright say you're not giving him food. Otherwise, it won't have the desired effect and might damage your relationship. Lanshi nodded repeatedly. So it turns out the ultimate secret often comes in the simplest form. It's just a matter of starving Xiaqing a few times. That's easy to do. And a perfect opportunity has just presented itself. The village bridge still hasn't been repaired. The village doctor went to make a house call to a resident with limited mobility this morning and won't be back at the clinic until the afternoon. Xiaqing can't see the doctor until the afternoon either. He also has work to do this morning, inspecting and adjusting some agricultural meteorological data detection equipment in the fields and surveying potential new monitoring points. Many of the fields here were reclaimed from the mountains and can only be accessed on foot. The long distance makes it difficult to go up and back in one trip. People usually can't make it back for lunch. Lanshi has already heard Xiaqing say he is packing a simple lunch to take with him. What a great chance to starve him a meal. Lanshi was eager to get started, rubbing her hands together in anticipation. And so, Lanshi went up the mountain with Xiaqing. Although Xiaqing didn't look too happy, he reluctantly allowed Lanshi to tag along. Not long after they set off, she enthusiastically volunteered, Boss Xia, let me carry the backpack. No need. Oh come on, just give it to me. Lanshi grabbed the backpack in one swift motion, grinning from ear to ear. No boss should make the employee do all the work without lifting a finger. Xiaqing gave Lanshi a look. It's not heavy. Carry it if you want. Just like that, Lanshi got her wish and put on the backpack. Other than the lunchbox and water bottle, there really wasn't anything else inside, so it truly wasn't heavy. Soon Xiaqing became engrossed in recording data from the meteorological monitoring stations along the way. Taking advantage while his attention was diverted, Lanshi took out the lunch and hid it behind a rock, covering it with some grass. Then, she clawed a hole in the bottom of the backpack. The aunt said not to let Xiaqing eat lunch, but she can't forbid it outright. She needs to come up with an excuse to make it reasonable for him to go hungry. Xiaqing spent a full 4 hours recording data before he remembered to eat lunch. But when he asked Lan Shi for the lunch box, he heard, "Oh no! Boss Xia! Big trouble!" Lan Shi let out a shocked cry, the panic in her voice slightly overacted. She held up the backpack to Xiaqing. "There's a hole here. Our lunch fell out." The villain acts first to frame the victim. Lan Shi quickly blamed the backpack. "The quality of this bag you bought is no good. How could it break so easily? We lost everything. Now we have nothing to eat." Sure enough, the excuse was very reasonable. Xiaqing pressed his lips tightly together without another word, apparently accepting her explanation. Lan Shi was quite pleased with herself. She would starve Xiaqing for one meal. Then wouldn't he become inseparable from her? But while Xiaqing could go hungry, Lan Shi herself could not. She pondered, thinking it would be a waste not to eat the hidden lunch. Right now Xiaqing seemed to have, resigned to having no food, thrown himself back into his work. He was examining a meteorological monitoring station, looking focused and invested. If she secretly slipped away for a private snack, he probably wouldn't notice, right? Lan Shi tiptoed over to the rock hiding the lunchbox, certain Xiaqing wasn't paying attention to her at all. Finally at ease, she sat down, took out the lunchbox, and prepared to start enjoying her meal. But just as she had stuffed both cheeks full, Xiaqing's gloomy voice sounded from behind her. "So embezzlement is in fashion nowadays? Discover dated novels on NOV/E/Lbin.co." Xiaqing said expressionlessly, "Does my share of lunch taste good?" The guidebook said that when caught red-handed, instead of reflecting on yourself, it's best to blame others. That is the key to victory. Lan Shi's mind raced and she protested, "Boss Xia, I can't believe how distrustful you are. To actually stalk me." She put on an aggrieved face. "Actually, I was just testing you. I wanted to see if your first reaction would be to suspect me. I already told you, I won't tell Uncle about those private matters between us. Why do you distrust me so much? The lunch is lost and your first reaction is that I did it. I feel very sad and disappointed." Xiaqing looked like he laughed from exasperation. "If the lost lunch wasn't your doing, then whose was it?" "It wasn't me." Lan Shi argued logically, "You saw the hole in the backpack yourself. The lunch really did fall out. I only came here to check if the food was still good before trying it." "Oh, so how did a perfectly fine backpack suddenly sprout a hole?" "Firstly, it proves there was an issue with the backpack quality. And out here in the wilderness, maybe some small badger or fox smelled the food and jumped on the bag, secretly biting a hole to get to it." Lan Shi was quite pleased with herself. After all, there were no surveillance cameras here. Xiaqing had no way of knowing she did it. Sure enough, Xiaqing nodded. "Makes sense." He smiled at Lan Shi. "Very logical." Lan Shi breathed a sigh of relief. "If the hole wasn't precisely in the shape and size of a palm print that matches your hand, I would have believed you." Xiaqing held up the backpack with a palm-shaped hole in front of Lan Shi's face and shook it. "Remember that next time the hole definitely can't be shaped like a handprint. Got it?" Lan Shi mentally berated herself. How could she overlook this issue? All her efforts were futile. The aunt said serious consequences would follow if you were caught starving the other party. Xiaqing was probably about to explode. But unexpectedly, Xiaqing did not get angry at all. He just looked a bit helpless and had a headache. The look in his eyes towards Lan Shi was extremely complex. Next time you try to pull something, make sure to remove all evidence related to yourself. If lunch isn't enough, you can tell me. I'll buy some for you. No need for this. He glanced at Lan Shi with her puffed out, food-filled cheeks. From now on, you won't go hungry. If you're hungry, tell me. I'll give you money for food. If you're this hungry, you can have my share too. He looked at Lan Shi, seeming a bit helpless. You look so slender, yet have such a big appetite and eat so much. Lan Shi didn't care about Xiaqing's later murmurs. She only heard him say he was giving her his lunch. Lan Shi couldn't help but light up. Really? Really? Xiaqing nodded, an expression on his face like he couldn't bear to refuse. After all, he didn't want to trouble the villagers too much here. The lunch Xiaqing had brought was very simple, yet even such plain, bordering on crude, fare made Lan Shi eat with great relish. She must have suffered a lot in the past. Never eaten stuff like this before? Nope. Lan Shi nodded vigorously as she wolfed down the food, sincerely praising, I've never eaten any of this stuff before. It's all so delicious. Mui's star had already entered the mode of replenishing itself through nutritional supplements instead of eating. Lan Shi really had never eaten so many delicious things on Earth before. Everything was very fresh and smelled so good. Don't they even give you things like this to eat? No, they don't. Lan Shi also didn't know why, but when she said that, Xiaqing's attitude became gentler and he showed a kind of pity. So that's why earlier, whenever she had the chance to eat something delicious, she would pathologically binge eat. It was similar to a little hamster stuffing its cheek pouches full of nuts in advance, storing up food first to withstand the cold hunger. I won't fire you. From now on you won't need to do anything you don't want to do ever again. No one can force you. You can also come to me when you want to eat. You don't need to worry that after eating this meal there won't be a next one. There's no need to binge. Xiaqing stared into Lan Shi's eyes. If there's anything you don't understand in the future, you can ask me. After Xiaqing said this, it seemed he still wasn't assured. From now on, if any other man asks you out, you have to let me know the time and place in advance. Lan Shi was stunned for a moment, then understood and laughed. This must be the possessiveness mentioned in the guidebook. Sure enough, going hungry like this for one meal increased her and Xiaqing's feelings to another level. Look how much he loves her. Auntie didn't lie to her. Although they couldn't sleep together, Lan Shi firmly believed that with the current progress, eventually conquering Xiaqing and getting him to marry her and give all his assets to her was just around the corner. After speaking, Lan Shi brought Xiaqing the lunch she had made. However, seeing her hungry gaze, Xiaqing said he wasn't hungry in the end and let Lan Shi eat his portion too. So Xiaqing went hungry for a whole meal. After coming down the mountain, he took Lan Shi straight to the village clinic in the village where the village doctor lived. In reality there was only one doctor in the village clinic, named Wang. The villagers affectionately called him Wang Divine Doctor. It was said Wang Divine Doctor was skilled in traditional Chinese medicine, and whenever any villager usually had a headache or fever, they only needed to find Wang Divine Doctor to take their pulse, and he could guarantee to prescribe medicine to cure their illness. Xiaqing had come to the village several times already, and every time he could hear villagers praising this village doctor to high heaven. But according to Xiaqing's understanding, the villagers would only look for this village doctor for common simple everyday illnesses like colds, fever, diarrhea etc. If it was truly a serious problem, they would still go to the hospital in town. Calling Wang village doctor a divine doctor was mostly because this doctor got along very well with the villagers. After all, Xiaqing had even seen Wang village doctor gossiping passionately together with the villagers about how Zhang family's dog got Li family's dog pregnant. Regarding acquaintances, people naturally looked at him through rose-tinted glasses. This time Xiaqing hadn't originally wanted to come. After all, after looking at the blood oxygen monitoring on his sports watch, combined with his own physical condition, Xiaqing believed he had no issues. His reason for seeing this village doctor was purely because of Lan Shi. Although this girl was the culprit behind the charcoal burning, her brain circuits were admittedly not normal. What's more, she had stayed inside the sealed furnace room even longer than himself. On the surface Lan Shi looked perfectly fine now, but carbon monoxide poisoning had delayed effects on the brain, so it couldn't be taken lightly. Right now the bridge still wasn't repaired, so there was no way they could go to hospitals in town or outside. They could only make do and see the village doctor first to take a look, check their pulses and so on. It was better to be safe than sorry regarding these kinds of things. Wang village doctor looked rather refined and cultured. Xiaqing walked in and greeted him, then pushed Lan Shi in front of him. Dr. Wang, please help take a look if she has any issues. Dr. Wang nodded and gestured for Lan Shi to hold out her hand. He grasped her wrist and focused intently, at times frowning and other times looking pensive. After feeling her pulse, this village doctor stroked his beard and nodded with comprehension. I understand your condition now. Xiaqing had been waiting for the doctor's diagnosis, but unexpectedly, after letting go of Lan Shi's hand, this village doctor walked towards Xiaqing instead. This patient, let me check your pulse too. Xiaqing was astonished. I don't need it, right? I feel like I'm fine. The village doctor shook his head. That won't do. You two were together last night. For this kind of thing, it's best to check both people's pulses together to be safer. Xiaqing thought about it. That made sense. Although he had inhaled less of the fumes since they had come all this way, and this village doctor was being so diligent in his duties, letting him check as well didn't hurt. Who knows, he might actually be a reclusive supreme master here. Wang village doctor grasped Xiaqing's wrist for a very long time before letting it go. Then this village doctor pointed at Lanqi. She has no issues, only slightly taxed physical strength. She needs to replenish more nutrients and rest well. After speaking, he looked at Xiaqing solemnly. The one with the problem is you. Xiaqing was astonished. Wang village doctor profoundly said, your pulse is slightly slow and weak. Although on the surface you look very robust, your inner body is actually very uncomfortable and severely deficient. At this point Xiaqing was genuinely surprised. He was currently still maintaining his usual calm and unruffled composure on the surface. With height and long legs, along with diligently working out, he naturally looked the picture of health without any visible issues. But, after making 2 round trips hiking up and down the mountain, and Xiaqing running around the fields recording data, then persisting in giving his lunch to Lanqi, he was actually already hungry enough that his chest was sticking to his back. He was barely keeping up appearances because of his upbringing. For this village doctor to be able to discern so much just from feeling his pulse, it made Xiaqing look at him with new eyes. Young man, this problem of yours is extremely major. The after effects from that night still remain until now. I'm afraid it will impact your future life. At this point Xiaqing became genuinely serious. So Lanqi was fine, but he was the one affected by carbon monoxide poisoning instead? What exactly is my specific condition? Wang village doctor stroked his beard again and solemnly said, your pulse shows deficient, weak heart and kidney, both vitally damaged. Overstrain of essence. Vitally damaged heart and kidney? Just from inhaling carbon monoxide, it would cause damage to his heart and kidneys? Xiaqing knitted his brows. Overstrain of essence sounds kind of. The village doctor glanced at him, interrupting with an expression of sincere advice. That's right, it's exactly what you're thinking. To put it simply, your kidneys are already severely deficient. Under Xiaqing's shocked gaze, Wang village doctor patted his shoulder and lowered his voice a bit. Your pulse is the archetype of overindulgence, young man. I'll prescribe you a course of medicine. Take it home and decoct it for a treatment course. It can nourish the kidneys. The price is a bit high, but I guarantee it'll cure you. You'll be full of vigor at night too. But during the medicine course you'll still need to restrain your sex life, reduce frequency and duration. If you don't listen to my advice and let your condition worsen, in the future you'll only be able to completely abstain for a period of time to nourish your kidneys. Then you'll need 3 whole treatment courses to heal. Xiaqing didn't speak, just pressed his lips together and looked at Wang village doctor coldly. Because she had nothing to do, Lanqi was already wandering around sniffing the medicinal ingredients over there. Wang village doctor followed Xiaqing's line of sight and looked over, smiling knowingly. Don't worry, she definitely has no issues. As the saying goes, only the ox that gets driven to exhaustion dies, the field that gets plowed has no complaints. Young people nowadays. Xiaqing expressionlessly nodded. Dr. Wang makes a lot of sense. What other deficiencies do I have that need replenishing together? Wang village doctor was stunned, then categorically said, your waist. You also need to pay attention to your waist. Because you overly indulge, it will also lead to insufficient rest for the nerves and joints of your lower back and pelvis. Ceaseless day and night battling will accumulate over time, causing strained waist muscles leading to back pain. Collapsed beds during lovemaking are especially damaging to the kidneys and waist. I have an analgesic cream for back pain that I invented myself here. You can buy some to prevent problems before they happen. Since you rarely come to the village, you can bring back more too, to recommend to relatives and friends after you recover. Xiaqing couldn't help laughing, so just feeling the pulse allows you to know so much detailed information, huh? Of course, of course. Then you deduced from the pulse that the bed collapsed when I was in her room with her at night too? Wang village doctor was a bit tongue-tied. That is. Dr. Wang, gossiping will only harm you. Xiaqing rubbed between his eyebrows and pointed at Lanqi. The bed did collapse, but between me and her, nothing happened. Do you understand? He said coldly. Wang village doctor thought briefly. I understand. His expression became even more serious, and his voice grew lower. Young man, your problem is even more serious than overindulging in lust. Is this a case of your essence being overtaxed, impotence, or failure to sustain an erection even after the bed collapsed and you still haven't finished? I'll prescribe you the right medicine and guarantee that your illness will be cured. Xiacheng was so angry that he couldn't get any words out. His kidneys were fine, but his liver was probably about to explode from rage. Fortunately, before Xiacheng's liver was further angered, the bridge was finally repaired, and Xiacheng had just completed the data collection work for this research trip, so Lan Shi followed him back from the mountain village to the Rome city center. The first thing to do after returning to Rome City was to put the charity project to build a new rural health center on the agenda. Xiacheng felt that it was imperative and arduous to eliminate the villagers' superstition towards Wang Xiyuanyi's medical skills. In addition, because he had not been in the company for several consecutive days, Xiacheng naturally also had a pile of things to deal with, and Lan Shi also had her own things to do. The first thing was to properly thank Wan Yan. So at noon, Lan Shi asked Wan Yan to come to the restaurant and decided to treat her to a meal. Although she didn't have a background and wasn't from a privileged family, Wan Yan was actually quite a nice person. Thank you so much for telling me about President Wu's information. You were absolutely right that President Wu is very enthusiastic and kind. I went there and he paid us the balance the same day. Lan Shi said sincerely, also, you are very selfless. You even said in advance that the results of this job would be enjoyed by me alone. You stubbornly refused to jointly claim this payment-chasing task with me in the system and gave me all the credit. But Wan Yan, as always being an employee who had the company at heart, was neither arrogant nor impetuous. Her face did not show any pride because of Lan Shi's praise. She had achieved not rejoicing in possessions or grieving over oneself. She only seemed to care about the company's business. Isn't President Xia on a business trip alone these days? How did you come back with him? Did something happen? Lan Shi was very moved. After she married Xiacheng in the future, the company would also be her property. Seeing an employee like Wan Yan working hard to earn money for her made Lan Shi feel that she should show her stance in advance. Don't worry about the company and Xiacheng, Lan Shi patted Wan Yan on the shoulder and said in a low voice, leave those worries to me. I remember your kindness. Just give me a year or two. When I get married to Xiacheng, I will definitely give you a promotion and a raise. Wan Yan was shocked. She stared at Lan Shi in front of her, feeling irritated while also incredulous. How could someone so shamelessly talk about planning to hook up with her boss? She had even planned to marry Xiacheng and become the boss's wife? Wouldn't a normal person with feelings for Xiacheng be silently enduring like herself, secretly making plans and taking action in private? What gave Lan Shi the confidence to say this so arrogantly in front of Wan Yan? Wan Yan didn't understand how Lan Shi could do this. Could it be because excessive beauty really is a weapon? Did she think she was so beautiful that even Xiacheng would fall for her? Wan Yan wanted to sneer at first, but when her gaze met Lan Shi's face, she couldn't laugh anymore. There had always been many women chasing after Xiacheng, but he was dedicated to his career and extremely cold and indifferent to the opposite sex. Even a childhood friend like Wan Yan only had a few more opportunities to meet him, but each time, even when Wan Yan tried her best, Xiacheng showed no sign of being moved at all. At the charity party last time, Xiacheng didn't even give her a bouquet, but tactlessly gave her a whole pile of stuffed buns. This made Wan Yan cry while eating all the stuffed buns that night. Her mouth was in heaven, but her heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar, experiencing the agony of fire and ice. The next day when she weighed herself, she had gained 1.5 kilos. At this moment, she desperately wanted to convince herself that Xiacheng would not be interested in Lan Shi. But Lan Shi was indeed extremely beautiful. If he had to face such a face every day, and then there's her figure. Xiacheng was also a hot-blooded normal man. What if he lost control and something happened? Moreover, Wan Yan had already keenly noticed that after returning from the mountain village trip this time, Xiacheng's attitude towards Lan Shi had subtly changed. But they probably hadn't slept together yet. Because the body language between two people who had slept together wouldn't be like this. But the current state could not represent the future. Moreover, Lan Shi had openly stated that she wanted to pursue Xiacheng for the future and become the boss's wife. She would probably have increasingly obvious offensives going forward. Wan Yan began to feel anxious. She had to do something to stop Lan Shi. Lan Shi was unaware of what Wan Yan was thinking. She just felt more and more comfortable on Earth recently. Xiaqing often arranged for her to attend meetings and work with him again instead of stubbornly avoiding her. She was getting along very happily with Xiaqing's sister and her future sister-in-law, Liang Di, and her down-to-earth self was even maintaining friendship with Wang Yan, an employee without a background in the company, plus with the Mui Star people's super powerful memory and data processing capabilities. Lan Shi was also very efficient and professional in her work, winning unanimous acclaim. Everything is very good, no problem. You don't need to teach me anything else. When Wang Jiqiang returned from his business trip and found Lan Shi described her recent life on Earth with such a sentence. Follow you stories at n/velb/in.com. Wang Jiqiang was obviously relieved. That's good. By the way, Princess, I have arranged a welcome banquet to greet you this weekend. I've been so busy with work and overtime recently that I haven't been able to immediately gather people to welcome you. I really owe you an apology. Wang Jiqiang introduced. Actually, apart from me, there are also people from our planet who have settled on Earth for business or personal reasons after traveling to Earth. Because of your arrival on Earth, I took this opportunity to reconnect and gather some more information again, and I'm currently working to improve the Mui Star Fellow Townsmen Association on Earth. So far, I have re-established the first batch of contacts. They are all tribesmen around my age or even older. Next, I will re-establish contacts with tribesmen around your age. The tribesmen in the first batch of contacts are all eagerly looking forward to meeting you, so I recently arranged a social gathering. I booked a high-end clubhouse, and the rest of the drinks and food expenses will be paid by our tribesmen. When he said this, Wang Jiqiang couldn't help but feel a little proud. I won't boast about other things, but all the tribesmen of my age who can still remain on Earth and thrive in various industries must now be the most wealthy and powerful elites in their respective fields. Their names resound loudly. There's President Zheng, who's on the Forbes rich list, President Lin from the real estate industry, President Qin from the biopharmaceutical company. At the social gathering, I'll introduce them to you one by one. In the future on Earth, if you need anything, just say the word, and our tribesmen can get it done. Wang Jiqiang bragged quite a bit. As for those around your age in the second batch, they are also extraordinary. After this first social gathering goes smoothly, I'll finish establishing the network for the second batch, and then we'll have a second meeting. I'll send you the specific location and time of the first social gathering. After bidding farewell to Wang Jiqiang, Lan Shi had just sat down humming a song when Wang Yan came over. She chatted with Lan Shi about this and that, which was something Wang Yan often did recently. She often chatted with Lan Shi and asked her a lot of questions. The guidebook said this is how intimate friends are on Earth, so Lan Shi didn't think much of it. At this moment, Lan Shi's cell phone text message tone rang. Lan Shi took out her cell phone and glanced at the screen. Time and location of the social gathering. It should be Wang Jiqiang's message. Lan Shi turned off her phone and looked up to find Wang Yan looking inquisitively at her cell phone. Seeing Lan Shi look at her, Wang Yan smiled and said, "Your phone case is so nice, can I try the feel? I'll buy one too if it's good." "Sure." Lan Shi nodded and handed over her phone. Wang Yan smiled and took Lan Shi's phone. Then, when Lan Shi was off guard, she turned on the phone screen. Just now when she took a quick look, Wang Yan could only vaguely see the word social gathering. This time she finally saw the whole message. Time and location of the social gathering, 6 p.m. Saturday at the Jinlin Clubhouse. Wang Yan kept her expression calm. After praising the phone case again for being nice-looking, she then returned the phone. She had finally caught Lan Shi's foxtail. Wang Yan was extremely excited. Wang Yan knew that a woman who looked like Lan Shi would not be satisfied with just hooking one man. Sure enough, she was going to a social gathering this Saturday. Chasing after Xiaqing while looking for the next target at the same time, how shameless could she be? Wang Yan sneered. Of course she would inform Xiaqing about this piece of news immediately in a natural way without looking deliberate. Luckily, it seemed that even the heavens were helping her. That afternoon, because of an issue with a financial report, Wang Yan happened to have the perfect excuse to go into Xiaqing's office to ask him to sign some documents. While Xiaqing was reviewing the financial reports, Wang Yan naturally brought up, "Senior, I heard from HR earlier that there may be an employee team building activity organized during the weekends in the near future, going to the beach or somewhere else. Is that true?" That's great. Lan Shi has been asking me about it. She's really looking forward to this kind of activity. I have to hurry and tell her the news." Wang Yan smiled, then seemed to suddenly remember something. "But the team building won't be this weekend, right?" Xia Qing, who had not even lifted his head and was just staring at the financial reports, clearly paused in his actions when Wang Yan mentioned Lan Shi. It won't be. He added, it won't be this weekend. The plans for the team-building activity haven't been finalized yet, it won't happen so soon. Wang Yan bit her lip and pretended to breathe a sigh of relief. That's good too. Lan Shi has a matchmaking event at Jinlin Club this Saturday night. Fortunately it's not this weekend, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to attend the team building. Sure enough, the 4 words Jinlin Club successfully made Xia Qing frown. It was widely known that Jinlin Club was a high-end private club. To be a member there, one had to either be an upper society elite or a top-tier nouveau riche. For a regular girl of average means like Lan Shi to attend a matchmaking event there meant something very obvious. Wang Yan covered her mouth as if she had said something wrong, looking very apologetic to Lan Shi. Ah, she told me to keep it a secret. Senior, just pretend you didn't know, okay? Don't let her find out I accidentally let it slip, or she'll be really mad at me. Xia Qing didn't ask anything further. He just furrowed his brows with a displeased expression, seemingly lost in thought. Seeing him like this, Wang Yan felt a mix of satisfaction and disappointment. She was satisfied that Lan Shi's vulgar gold-digging ways had finally been exposed in front of Xia Qing. Yet she also felt disappointed that this woman had already gradually attracted Xia Qing's attention, causing him to have an emotional reaction. In her heart, she both hoped that Xia Qing would directly go to the club on Saturday night to catch her in the act and expose Lan Shi's true colors. Yet she also hoped that he wouldn't go, wishing that he would distance himself from Lan Shi from just hearing about this. But it was all right, Wang Yan cheered herself on. No matter what, as long as Xia Qing sees through what kind of person Lan Shi really is, that's good enough. Lan Shi was rather looking forward to being able to attend the gathering of fellow Mui Star immigrants that Saturday night. After all, Wang Jiqiang was the only person from Mui Star she had met since arriving on Earth. There was strength in numbers. She had temporarily conquered Xia Qing, but to further use this to conquer Earth, she would need more manpower. She had to make long-term plans to solidify her future rule over Earth. To this end, Lan Shi was already filled with anticipation on Friday evening after work. It was just that before leaving work, Xia Qing called her into his office. He asked her some questions about data, then while flipping through documents, he glanced up at Lan Shi once. Do you have any plans this weekend? Xia Qing pressed his lips into a line. If you have any special arrangements, remember to report them to me. He said that, then unnaturally averted his gaze and added, don't forget, aside from our employee relationship, we also have another kind of relationship. In theory, you need to be on standby 24 hours a day. So I want to understand your schedule in advance, especially meeting other men. You need to notify me beforehand even more. Naturally, wasn't a romantic relationship a 24-hour on standby kind of relationship? Unfortunately, Lan Shi had to lie this time. They were all her fellow countrymen, a group of aliens. It was hard for everyone to get together and speak freely. She couldn't allow an Earth person to mix into the gathering. How else could they speak freely and discuss plans to conquer Earth? No meetings with men. Not a single one. Lan Shi's face didn't redden and her heart didn't race. She said with complete sincerity, I'm planning on staying home on Saturday to earnestly study the company's business and make preparations to work overtime better in the future. Xia Qing looked at her for a moment without saying anything. It looks like he believed it. Lan Shi complimented him a few more times, repeatedly reassuring him before happily leaving with a smile, convinced everything would go perfectly. Looking at her back view, Xia Qing felt rather irritated as he tugged at his tie. He knew he shouldn't interfere, but Xia Qing couldn't stand by as things happened right before his eyes. Statistics showed that many girls who suffered sexual assault in their youth, even when they grew up and clearly understood the harm those past experiences caused, due to the trauma imprinted on them since childhood, they would often easily develop a self-destructive psychological state. As a result, it was very easy for their lives to continue down that dark path from the past. A large proportion of fallen women were victims of sexual assault in their youth. However, if they didn't have strong guardianship and supervision, as well as proper psychological counseling and support, it was very easy for these girls to fall back into the abyss again. Lan Shi was too beautiful. With her looks, she was inherently prone to being corroded by the temptations of the outside world. Moreover, her social and comprehension abilities were clearly problematic. If she also stumbled into a predator's trap. The kind of people going in and out of places like Jinlin Club were all people high in status and power. An idiot like Lan Shi going there would definitely be taken advantage of without anything left. So was it believable when she said she had no Saturday night plans? Xia Qing didn't know. But coincidentally, he also had no arrangements on Saturday night, plus as a frequent host of business banquets and entertainment, he happened to be a member of Jinlin Club as well. Having a rare chance to meet her compatriots on an alien planet, Lan Shi dressed very formally. She maxed out her credit card to buy an expensive dress, determined to attend elegantly dressed. Naturally, upon arriving at the club, Lan Shi felt it was all worth it. With one look, all the people coming and going were either wealthy or nobility. In every brick and wallpaper of the club, one could feel the extravagant luxurious atmosphere. The service staff were respectful and humble. Champagne and desserts could be seen everywhere. The lavish decor. Lan Shi finally had some feelings of being a princess again. Wang Jiqiang was very proud. "Princess, isn't this arrangement not bad, right?" When Lan Shi pushed the door of the private room open, inside was a group of middle-aged and elderly people with dignified and stately bearings, wearing either black suits or formal dresses. They immediately stood up upon seeing her and respectfully bent at the waist to bow down before Lan Shi. "Princess, have you noticed these people are all very familiar?" Wang Jiqiang arrogantly introduced the members one by one to Lan Shi. Lan Shi nearly got lost among the string of titles: presidents, chairman, major shareholders, managing partners. What was even more excited than her was this group of peak achievers in the eyes of Earth. "Princess. To think I'd get to see you again in my lifetime after coming to Earth. You may not remember me. I'm the neighbor of your second aunt's husband's third aunt's son's family. After leaving Mui Star, I've missed the imperial capital this whole time. What's it like there now? Has it changed a lot? The last time I saw royalty was at your Majesty's accession ceremony. In a blink, Princess has grown up so much." No matter what race, upon reaching a certain age, there would be feelings of nostalgia towards one's homeland, like fallen leaves returning to their roots. This group of usually stoic and stern peak achievers, upon seeing Lan Shi, were almost moved to tears as they pulled her aside to reminisce about the past on Mui Star and inquired considerately about her current situation. "Princess, do you plan to stay on Earth for long this time? Have you encountered any difficulties? We arrived and settled on Earth early on, so we have some resources." She didn't have any difficulties, but... Lan Shi thought about the debt on her credit card. "Do you have money? Give me some money." Just as Lan Shi's abilities were strength, sensitivity towards the weather, superb memory, and exceptional data analysis, these Mui Star immigrants before her also each had their own unique strengths. Having secretly blended into Earth early on, relying on their own talents, they had now deeply embedded themselves across different fields, built up their businesses, and what they did not lack at all was money. President Lin of that real estate company immediately showed an obliging attitude. "Princess, how much do you want?" Lan Shi held out her palm and made a gesture, somewhat embarrassedly said, 5,000, is that okay? Working is really difficult, money does not come easily. After coming to Earth, Lan Shi only realized that having money to spend is not a law of nature. 5,000 yuan is often several months of living expenses for many Earthlings. President Lin confirmed, 5,000? Is 5,000 enough, Princess? Enough. Okay. Give me an account, I'll go back and arrange for someone to transfer the 50 million out as soon as possible in batches. 50 million? Lan Shi couldn't help but stare widely. You're so rich. Before President Lin could answer, several other presidents immediately expressed that they also wanted to donate generously. Princess, if it's not enough for you, I have some too. Me too. Lan Shi laughed so much that she could barely close her mouth. She immediately took out the payroll card that Wang Jiqiang had handled for her. Quick, transfer it to me quickly. Since Lan Shi had already issued such a clear instruction, the other presidents immediately took out their mobile phones one by one with dignified attitude and issued instructions to their finance department. It's just. Soon, President Lin, who took action first, showed embarrassment on his face and walked to Lan Shi. Princess, I can't transfer the money in. He tidied up his words and explained, my financial officer reported to me that your card is a second-class bank card. On Earth, the daily transfer in and out limit for second-class cards is 10,000 yuan. So we can only transfer 10,000 yuan. And the annual transfer in limit for your second-class card is 200,000 yuan. Wang Jiqiang, who handled the card, was a little embarrassed. He touched his nose. Princess, to crack down on financial fraud, banks are very strictly managed now, especially for issuing first-class cards. Auditing is very difficult to pass. I could only issue a second-class card for you. If it was a second-class card, then according to the limit. 20,000 per year, just to collect President Lin's 50 million, it would take 250 years, Princess. Wang Jiqiang fawned, let's take it slow. You'll have 50 million as a rich Earth woman after 250 years. President Lin thought for a while and came up with another idea. I'm in real estate development. Princess, things like properties, you can sell them for cash in the future. Why don't I transfer the ownership of 10 properties to you now? That won't work either, Wang Jiqiang said embarrassingly. When the princess applied for her ID previously, it was registered as an out-of-town resident. Now there's a purchase restriction, she can't buy property in Rong City. He forced an awkward laugh, it's too difficult to get Rong City residency. Seeing the atmosphere was wrong, Wang Jiqiang sneaked out first. He pretended to look at the time. Oh, princess, it's this time already. I have to call my wife. I'll go out first and let you guys continue. I don't believe your nonsense. Whether Earth will be destroyed or become extinct after 250 years is questionable. Forget it, at least got 10,000 first for now. Lan Shi thought for a while and came up with a clever idea. Do you guys have cash? Just give me all your cash first. As soon as she commanded this, President Lin, who moved the fastest, immediately took out all the cash from his wallet at the first instance and stuffed it into Lan Shi's hand. Princess, take this money. I have some too. Princess, is this enough? Princess, use mine. Princess. Just as Lan Shi was happily accepting money one by one, enjoying being called princess, she heard a voice coming from outside the private room. Then the door of the private room was pushed open forcefully. Sir, this private room is for other members' private events. If you don't have an invitation letter for this event, you cannot. Pushing the door and entering against the server's obstruction was an angry-looking man. Xia Cheng? Looking at the person at the door, Lan Shi's heart beat like a drum. She didn't know how Xia Cheng ended up here. Xia Cheng across from her had a sullen face and stared fiercely at Lan Shi and the money in Lan Shi's hands. The atmosphere was a bit tense. However, Wang Jiqiang's excited voice broke the silence. Princess, I just reported to my wife, and I can go home late tonight. Wang Jiqiang, who had just pretended to make a phone call, really made a call this time. It was rare to have this kind of gathering, so he persuaded his wife to get permission to return home late tonight. Feeling that the timing in the private room should be about right, he slipped back in. As a result, as soon as he pushed open the door, he was frightened by Xia Cheng at the door. President, Xia? At that moment, Wang Jiqiang was so frightened that he almost had a heart attack. Damn his loose mouth, how did Princess slip out so easily? How much did Xia Cheng hear when he came in? Could it be that the identity he had endured humiliation and changed his name to hide for more than 10 years was going to be completely exposed today? Not only Wang Jiqiang, Lan Shi was also a little overwhelmed for a while. She felt guilty as if caught cheating and was equally afraid of her identity being exposed. On Earth TV shows, aliens would always be reported and taken to the dissection table. Especially with her status as the Princess of Mui Star, how could she still accomplish the great mission of conquering Earth? Princess? Sure enough, Xia Cheng frowned and repeated these two words solemnly. Lan Shi argued, you heard wrong. Xia Cheng paused, glared at Lan Shi, then looked at everyone else in the room, gritting his teeth. He, him, and him all called you princess. I heard it all clearly. His voice was gloomy. I know very clearly already. It's over. Lan Shi didn't expect her princess identity to be exposed like this. Just as she was racking her brains about any possibility of a last struggle, she heard Xia Cheng speak again. His tone was angry. Princess. So you are actually a princess. They all know she's a princess now. Why is he still acting like this? Since her identity was already exposed, Lan Shi was straightforward too. She reminded in a friendly manner, you already know I'm a princess. You need to watch your words. As a result, before she could finish, Xia Cheng pulled her over angrily. He furiously said, you don't have to emphasize your princess identity. I already know very clearly. Xia Cheng looked around at the various middle-aged men in the room. Didn't you tell me you didn't have any special plans for the weekend, especially not to see men? You said you'd stay at home to study the company's business properly? Turns out you're very capable, Lan Shi. You openly violated your promise and became a KTV princess behind my back. And you even remind me to watch my words. What, can't say anything if I don't choose you as a princess here and give you money to spend money on you? Lan Shi was stunned speechless by the scolding, while inside the room, some Xingren who couldn't help trying to defend their princess said, Princess, how dare he? But before they could finish speaking, Xiaqing interrupted, President Lin, you're also a big shot in the real estate industry. At your age, coming here to solicit the princess, it really makes me lose respect for you. Can you even keep up with the popular songs played at KTVs nowadays? President Lin. The Lachlan Club did indeed offer KTV services, but Xiaqing was shocked to discover that even a high-end club that claimed to operate properly was involved in such sordid affairs privately. He didn't give Lan Shi a chance to speak, merely glanced around at everyone present with their complex reactions, and spat out 2 words amidst those gazes. Perverts. The various middle-aged presidents and CEOs present. Xiaqing cursed them without any psychological barrier. These influential middle-aged presidents, shareholders and CEOs had gone to the trouble of booking the luxurious Lachlan Club and crowding around Lan Shi alone, giving her piles of cash. It was obvious they didn't just want to put their arms around her and sing KTV songs together. Xiaqing dragged Lan Shi outside. He couldn't help it anymore and shot her a cold look. Are you that short of money? Lan Shi was still in shock. Princess? KTV princess? What was that? They knew she was a real princess, yet Xiaqing still dared to show such disrespect. His irritated expression upon seeing her blank confusion seemed to further anger Xiaqing. He rubbed his brow and said heavily, Lan Shi, don't make excuses. Don't say nothing happened. If nothing really happened, would they have stayed silent when I scolded them just now? Humph, some of them even kept sneaking looks at you when they left. Xiaqing loosened his tie slightly, an incredulous expression on his face. I really didn't expect that these successful figures with fame and standing in the industry would actually be hypocritical lechers like this. Xiaqing pressed his lips tightly together and stared at Lan Shi. So how did they give you money? Give her money? They took turns. Other than taking turns lining up to give her money, was there another way? Took turns? Hearing this, Xiaqing looked like his worldview had been bombarded. So many of them, and they really only wanted you? And they took turns, with you. Xiaqing seemed unable to say anything more. He looked at Lan Shi in shocked disbelief. And you agreed? Do you know what this means? Xiaqing's expression was very grave. I didn't know the concept of shared economy had already penetrated to this extent. Can't believe these wealthy men would still be so miserly. He rubbed his brow, looking extremely vexed. Are you an idiot? How could you take money like this? And you only took so little, way too cheap. She was right, Lan Shi also felt she had taken too little. So I should take more next time? She looked down lovingly at the cash in her arms, still emitting a nice fragrance. But just then, following Lan Shi's gaze, Xiaqing noticed she was still clutching that huge wad of cash. Amidst Lan Shi's reluctant eyes, Xiaqing snatched away the thick stack of cash she held. I'll return this dirty money for you. You can't keep these ill-gotten gains. Xiaqing's voice was icy cold. From now on, no next time. No matter the amount, you can't take money like this anymore. You can't do unethical things just for money. Having said this, Xiaqing walked back into the private room. He emerged after a while, now empty-handed. Lan Shi felt like she couldn't breathe from heartache. Her money. How did it become dirty? That money was all nice new notes taken by her people. Super clean. How was it dirty money? You still can't bear to part with it? Xiaqing looked like he would soon explode from anger. If you're short on money in future, borrow from me. But doesn't borrowed money need to be returned? Can you just give me money like they did? Xiaqing was so angry his features seemed twisted. Don't even think about it. I absolutely won't do anything like them, do that kind of thing then give you money. I would never consume in that way. What's more, you actually want money for nothing? Xiaqing pointed at the private room. Do you think you really got money for nothing from them? You think you don't need to pay any price when taking money from them? Indeed, she probably had to confer some honorary titles like Earthling Ambassador of Shinran Peace or something on these people after taking their money. Not saying anything now? Xiaqing glared at Lan Shi. How do you know these people? Before Lan Shi could reply, it seemed Xiaqing thought of something. It's Wang Jiqiang, isn't it? Wasn't the last person who came in Wang Jiqiang? As Chinin Group's HR director, it wasn't surprising Wang Jiqiang knew many top executives and presidents in the industry through headhunters. But to think he would abuse those connections for shady side business. Xia Cheng's face darkened as he opened the group's digital contacts list and found Wang Jiqiang's home number, intending to kindly let his wife know too. Not only did he pimp himself out, he consumed the services too. And acted as a customer. How was this something a person should do? Unfortunately, Wang Jiqiang worked under Xiaqing at Chinin Group. If he worked under Xiaqing at Chinin Group instead, Xiaqing would have fired him first thing. As for Lan Shi, she clearly didn't feel ashamed at all about what she did. Lacking such social awareness, she at least needed professional treatment and psychological counseling, requiring intervention by specialists. But Lan Shi was extremely resistant to the idea. I won't go. I hate hospitals. And doctors. Intelligent as Lan Shi was, she quickly realized her identity hadn't been exposed. Xiaqing still didn't know she was a real princess. She wasn't an idiot. If she went to hospital for all sorts of full-body checks, her abnormal physiology or blood work results that differed from normal people might be discovered. Then she'd really end up on the dissection table. She looked warily at Xiaqing. There's nothing wrong with me. Why would I need to go to hospital? Don't you feel like your cognitive abilities are? I'm perfectly fine. I'd rather die than go to hospital. Lan Shi glared at Xiaqing, extremely unwilling. Also, return my money to me. That money originally belonged to me. If you don't pay me back, I'll stick to you like glue and live in your house without leaving. Xiaqing felt he shouldn't have gotten involved at all. The rescued fallen girl he saved now seemed quite ungrateful. But things had already reached this point. He couldn't shake Lan Shi off and had no choice but to bring her back home. He invited Professor Wu, a specialist in autism, to his villa to see her since he had sent Buddha to the West. With her condition, it's highly likely she has high-functioning autism spectrum disorder. Intervention works best the earlier autism is detected, so it would have been better if she was younger. But even at her age now, the best approach is still to frequently interact with trusted family members, implicitly picking up those family members' ways of communicating and interacting in daily life through their gestures, actions, speech, expressions, and exchanges, the skills and techniques they use when interacting and communicating with each other. As for her inability to pick up on innuendo you mentioned, that also requires frequent training, such as family members demonstrating scenarios from daily life repeatedly as examples, giving her more learning opportunities from life situations. And there's no need to treat her as abnormal in daily life. Treat her as you would anyone else, just with some extra tolerance. Incorrect habits and warped values can only be gradually corrected and reformed through education and behavioral therapy. Professor Wu gave Lan Shi, who was sitting uncaringly on the living room sofa eating snacks, a meaningful look. She's very, very pretty, but I have to warn you, dating someone with autism can be very painful, because they may never be able to understand your feelings, perhaps even unable to accurately sense love. Professor Wu sighed. It's not like having a cold or fever that can be cured. Autism can only be managed through love and tolerance, slowly integrating the patient into normal social life, but it can't be cured. Xiaqing pressed his lips tightly together, replying almost reflexively. I don't intend to date her. She's just an employee of mine. He cleared his throat. I just can't stand to see vulnerable groups like her being deceived and taken advantage of right before my eyes. Xiaqing pressed his lips together. It's just a kind act of charity. He glanced at Lan Shi. She has no family left. Would it be possible to arrange for a professional educational or behavioral therapist? Do you have any recommendations? I can cover the expenses. There are some options, Professor Wu said regretfully. But the experts I know don't have availability. You'll have to look elsewhere. Xiaqing nodded. Professor Wu seemed unable to hold back. She took Xiaqing's arm, but this market has always been uneven, with some internet-famous behavioral therapists not as professional as claimed. Also, autism patients themselves have difficulty expressing clearly, and there have been instances of therapists becoming the perpetrators of harm against patients. And this girl's appearance. All new chapters nnv.com. Professor Wu left her implication unsaid, but Xiaqing understood her meaning. Someone like Lan Shi, who had no family and such deeply impaired communication abilities, happened to develop a certain appearance. If she encountered a therapist with ill intentions, it would be like a lamb entering a tiger's den. Not only had she suffered sexual assault in the past, this time she nearly fell victim to the designs of an unscrupulous group of wealthy men. It was to the point that even Xiaqing could not bear to see it. After sending Professor Wu away, Xiaqing looked towards Lan Shi. At this time, as Lan Shi sat on the sofa eating happily, she even swung her feet back and forth. There was no denying Lan Shi had an innocent face, but it was not plain at all, rather richly and brightly beautiful, nearly bewitching. To describe her as cherry-cheeked and peach-faced would be most apparent. Noticing Xiaqing's gaze, she smiled at him. After smiling at Xiaqing, Lan Shi lowered her head again, researching something on her phone with great focus and investment. In that moment, Xiaqing's feelings of sympathy and sense of responsibility reached their peak. He couldn't help his voice softening. Studying? Lan Shi smiled at him again, a very charming smile, with a clever light in her eyes. She nodded vigorously, yes. On the way back, Xiaqing had told Lan Shi she could use the internet to learn more common knowledge if she wished. Seeing her now, he felt that although her behavior was eccentric and understanding poor, if she was willing to learn, there was hope for Lan Shi. And she did seem quite invested in her studying. Xiaqing took out his laptop, used the laptop to read. The screen is bigger and easier on the eyes compared to a phone, and it's more convenient too. When you're done studying, I'd like to discuss with you. Thank you. Lan Shi took the laptop and quickly became engrossed in study. Half an hour later, Xiaqing had to interrupt her. I need to confirm some data. Could you return the laptop to me for a few minutes? Lan Shi nodded. Reluctantly, with an expression of unfinished yearning, she closed the laptop and gave it back to Xiaqing, staring at him longingly. No wonder she had earned so many certificates, as recorded in her resume. Clearly she had learning capacity. Xiaqing's pity towards Lan Shi grew. This pity lasted until he opened the laptop himself and saw what Lan Shi had been focused on studying so intensely. The laptop screen now showed the content Lan Shi had been researching. 100 tricks to borrow money and not pay back. Lan Shi was puzzled. It was Xiaqing who had mentioned that she could learn from the internet when encountering problems, but now he was the one sternly forbidding her from studying. What should I do if there's something I don't know? Xiaqing glanced at the time. I still have half an hour free. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. Lan Shi became excited. She did have a bunch of questions she wanted to ask, and these questions were not covered in the guidebook at all. She had diligently collected and organized these questions herself. Why do some people have dirty thoughts in their minds? The human brain should be pink when alive and gray-white when dead, right? What is the principle behind fireflies' glowing bottoms? Do they have miniature flashlights inserted in their bottoms? Doesn't it feel uncomfortable to have them inserted all the time? Can they get hemorrhoids? At first, Xiaqing answered her questions simply and explained them. But as they went on, his expression became somewhat unpleasant. Are these 100,000 whys? What are 100,000 whys? Discover NW Chapter SNN0EL by.com. Xiaqing looked somewhat helpless, his face turning serious. Your questions are too numerous and varied. Many of them are not useful for real life. We'll start with the basics, and from now on, I'll take the time to teach you some common knowledge every week. I'll choose to answer the questions that have value. But you have to promise me that you won't accept money from those old men anymore. Don't accept money from anyone randomly. You can make more friends, but before getting close to them, you must tell me. Xiaqing thought for a moment and added, if you're unsure, try not to go out alone with unfamiliar people. Lan Shi was actually reluctant, but she considered that it would take 150 years to get 5 million cards, while she could get more money directly after marrying Xiaqing. So, she decided to comply with Xiaqing's wishes and nodded vigorously. Xiaqing's decision was also impulsive. But Lan Shi seemed to understand nothing at all. Her childhood living environment was obviously too harsh. Although she had already grown up, her mental state was completely like that of a child. Before arranging for a professional and reliable behavioral interventionist to help her, Xiaqing decided to temporarily take on the responsibility of guiding Lan Shi to better integrate into society. He started by addressing the everyday scenarios that Lan Shi might encounter, desperately trying to make her understand some high-frequency phrases and situations. Xiaqing taught her a lot about social etiquette and basic rules. Lan Shi seemed to understand and recognize that this was a rare opportunity. She listened attentively, taking notes seriously. This brought a slight sense of comfort to Xiaqing, who had been lecturing until his mouth went dry. She was capable of analyzing such complex meteorological data, indicating that she wasn't stupid, but she just hadn't been properly guided. After half an hour of teaching, Xiaqing stopped and asked, "Have you learned everything I just taught?" "I've learned it." "Then let me give you a few questions to answer and see how well you've absorbed the information." Lan Shi sat up straight, looking confident about the upcoming test. This gave Xiaqing a sense of accomplishment to some extent. His efforts were paying off. With Xiaqing's guidance, Lan Shi should be able to quickly return to normal social interactions. If your boss or colleague tells you to put yourself in someone else's shoes, what should you do? This question is too easy. Just now, Xiaqing mentioned an exam, and Lan Shi got quite nervous. But now, there's no need to worry. Lan Shi confidently suggested, "Then let's switch seats." Perhaps it was Lan Shi's quick and accurate response that impressed Xiaqing. He widened his eyes slightly, as if he couldn't believe it. "I've been talking about the implicit messages in the workplace for so long, so in your understanding, this is about empathy and putting yourself in someone else's shoes?" After a moment of reflection, Lan Shi suddenly realized, "I apologize for not being precise in my previous answer. Besides switching seats, you also need to continue thinking after switching." As a princess, Lan Shi has always had strong learning abilities. She knows that this ability might be hard to believe for Xiaqing, but unfortunately, it's true. Sure enough, when Xiaqing presented the next question, his tone carried a clear hint of frustration. "If you encounter unreasonable clients or strangers and get into a conflict with them, and they say something provocative like 'This is how I am, if you have the guts, just kill me,' what should you do?" The tone clearly revealed Xiaqing's envy towards Lan Shi's learning abilities. But this question, isn't it too simple? Lan Shi clenched her fist and declared, "I have the ability, so I choose to kill them." "Then what does you wait, I'll give you a taste of pain mean? What does the other person intend to do?" Lan Shi smiled faintly. "It means the other person appreciates my artistic sense and wants to provide me with colors to paint. No wonder they say jealousy can distort a person's appearance." Lan Shi felt that Xiaqing's expression had twisted a bit. "I've already been lenient with you on these questions. You learned it? I think you've become useless." Lan Shi was taken aback. "Lenient? Where was I lenient? Do you want me to go shut off the water tap?" Xiaqing seemed to have lost his temper. He regained his composure and said, "Forget it. Your learning seems to be a massive and systematic project. It needs careful consideration. Before I get angry, I'll take you back to the employee dormitory." "Angry? Are you giving up again?" Lan Shi genuinely felt reluctant this time. "Then you don't have to face death alone. I can accompany you." Xiaqing was already numb. He glanced at Lan Shi with an expressionless face and calmly said, "Thank you for your kindness, but it's unnecessary. I can handle it on my own. Instead of worrying about others, worry about yourself." "That's exactly what I'm doing." Lan Shi looked up at the night sky, which was already filled with darkness. She sincerely said, "Actually, accompanying you is just a side note. I'm mainly concerned about myself because there will be a severe thunderstorm soon. The precipitation will be terrifying. 10 minutes after the thunderstorm begins, the roads will flood, and the tunnel will be closed. It's very unsafe to drive." She turned to Xiaqing and said thoughtfully, "It's dangerous to go out at this time. I can take shelter here and, incidentally, keep you company. There won't be a thunderstorm." Xiaqing's voice was firm. Whether it's the official weather forecast or the forecast from the Qingxin meteorological system, there's absolutely no possibility of a thunderstorm tonight. Xiaqing looked at Lan Shi and said, "I believe in algorithms, not your nonsense. Next time, you should come up with a better excuse." Unfortunately, soon enough, the algorithm that Xiaqing firmly believed in slapped him in the face with a resounding blow. Just as Xiaqing finished speaking, the sky roared with thunder. Following a massive lightning strike, a thunderstorm arrived. Within a short 5 minutes, the delayed weather forecast finally calculated that nearly 40 millimeters of precipitation had already occurred. It was indeed a massive thunderstorm unsuitable for going outside. Lan Shi pointed at the pouring rain outside and said, "See." Indeed, there was no way to go out. Xiaqing glanced at the torrential rain outside and wore an expression of resignation. He sat back at the table, took a deep breath, and decided to patiently explain to Lan Shi during this time. Putting oneself in another's shoes doesn't actually require you to change places physically. It means you should empathize with the other person's perspective and consider things from their point of view. When someone says this, it means they feel that you cannot understand their situation. If you have the ability, kill me is just a metaphor. Uttering such words indicates that the person has made up their mind to act helpless and resort to evasiveness. In the face of such words, you shouldn't actually physically harm the other person, but you can negotiate with a more assertive attitude and measures, at least not showing any mercy to someone who can say such things, even if it means tearing off the mask. Xiaqing spoke seriously as if he had realized something. Lying down and doing nothing doesn't mean literally lying on a bed or the ground. It means not wanting to bother with something anymore, adopting a laissez-faire attitude. Give you a taste of your own medicine means the other person is ready to teach you a lesson. When encountering such a person, it's best to avoid direct confrontation and seek help or call the authorities. Why do fireflies glow? It's because. As for I'm about to be furious, it doesn't mean I'm really going to die. It means your behavior is infuriating me to the extreme. I can't take it anymore in most cases doesn't mean one is going to die but rather that there's a situation one can't bear. So, I don't actually mean I can't take it anymore or that I'm going to die. With each explanation, Lan Shi's expression grew increasingly surprised. So, all her previous understandings were wrong? The guidebook didn't write any of this. So, you're not unable in everything? It's just about sleeping? Xiaqing couldn't help raising his voice. Of course, I'm not unable. I'm perfectly fine. I see. Xiaqing looked visibly troubled. Also, when it comes to borrowing money and not repaying it, there's no need to search online for a solution. But for some common questions, it's still useful to look them up online. Xiaqing pondered for a moment and added, however, the internet's only problem is the overwhelming amount of information, along with a lot of marketing and advertisements. Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish which information you truly need. But overall, it's not bad. If you can develop stronger search and precise targeting abilities, the internet can be very useful. In the future, you should learn how to narrow down your search online, step by step, eliminating irrelevant information and ultimately finding the answers to your questions. I'll teach you this when I have the time. Xiaqing explained patiently, his tone calm. However, from time to time, he would look up at the stormy weather outside the window and subtly clench his fists. His expression remained composed and natural, but Lan Shi clearly felt that his biomagnetic field had become disturbed, filled with a sense of restlessness. Did I make you unhappy or are the problems bothering you too much? No, Xiaqing immediately denied, giving a concise and straightforward answer. Lan Shi continued to look at him, filled with guilt. She had been calm and composed before asking the questions, so why did she become restless after asking them? He was definitely saying one thing but meaning another. It was evident that after Lan Shi conquered him, this emotion made Xiaqing unwilling to vent his negative feelings on her, so he chose to endure silently. Clearly, it was her own overwhelming and difficult issues that caused Xiaqing to be troubled. The guidebook had mentioned that if Earthlings suppress and restrain their negative emotions for a long time, it could eventually affect their physical health, leading to various diseases, including incurable cancers. Unexpectedly, Xiaqing, he truly loved her. Lan Shi felt so moved that she was almost on the verge of tears. She still didn't fully understand and feel the various emotions of Earthlings. She had been exploring and learning, but Xiaqing patiently explained Earth knowledge to her and took care of her, avoiding pitfalls. Even though he was internally restless, he endured it and treated her kindly, leaving the suppressed frustration and suffocation to himself. If this wasn't love, then where else in the entire universe could true affection be found? Anyway, if you're not sure about the meaning of certain words or phrases, you can ask me or a trusted friend, Xiaqing said, unaware of Lan Shi's thoughts. As if he had thought of something, he repeatedly cautioned, but I need to remind you that you must maintain a certain level of caution when interacting with the opposite sex. Lan Shi stared at him, deeply moved. How do I maintain caution? Start by not staring at others with that kind of look. Xiaqing's voice sounded somewhat unnatural but serious. He warned again, you're not allowed to look at me like that. Oh. Lan Shi averted her gaze and obediently looked at the ground beneath her feet. Only then did she hear Xiaqing pause for a moment before continuing the unfinished topic. Simply put, remember this: if a man takes off his clothes and then asks you to undress, especially if he pulls you into a closed space with only the two of you and looks at you with a lecherous gaze, it's definitely not a good thing. Most likely, this person has ulterior motives and wants to take advantage of you. You must not undress and immediately distance yourself from this man. In this world, many people are familiar with faces but not hearts. In any case, once you encounter this kind of situation, it's extremely dangerous, and you must distance yourself from it and then call the police or find me. Xiaqing looked at Lan Shi. Do you understand? Lan Shi nodded repeatedly. I understand. Could Lan Shi not understand? Apart from Xiaqing's earnest admonitions, she also felt his meticulous care for her out of love. Although his mood had become increasingly irritable and unpleasant, he never vented his anger on Lan Shi and remained gentle and calm. However, although Xiaqing has clarified that his health is not deteriorating to the point of no return, if things continue like this, there's no guarantee that he won't develop other emotional breakdowns or illnesses. Returning kindness for kindness, Lan Shi cannot simply stand by and watch Xiaqing head down a path of no return. At this moment, Xiaqing stood up and went to the kitchen to pour a cup of hot water. Taking this opportunity, Lan Shi quickly took out her phone. As Xiaqing had mentioned, for simple basic life questions, searching the internet would suffice, as long as she learned to narrow down the search range and locate precisely. How to comfort a man in such a situation should be the simplest question for anyone on earth. Lan Shi input the keywords of her own question, and sure enough, a dazzling array of answers filled the entire screen of her phone. As expected, just as Xiaqing had said, the only flaw of the internet is that the information online is complex and chaotic. Sometimes, finding the right answer amidst a sea of advertisements, marketing, and off-topic responses is like finding a needle in a haystack. However, Lan Shi, being a worldly princess, quickly grasped the essence among a heap of information on how to comfort a man. How to comfort a man in the late night. Lan Shi looked at the night scenery outside the window. Wasn't this narrowing down the range and precisely locating? After all, comforting someone during the day and at night would surely be different. The ways to comfort a woman and a man must also be different. And as Lan Shi clicked on these links, she discovered that the ways to comfort someone during the day and at night were indeed vastly different. Daytime comforting mainly revolved around considerate words that matched his mood, shifting the topic to something light, gentle hugs, more or less the same. But nighttime comforting. Lan Shi looked at the content online and exclaimed, so that's how it is. Luckily, she searched for it. Comforting someone at night seemed to require a certain level of expertise. After all, there were so many steps involved. And there were also many different positions. Please visit Laughing Beauty Literature official website for the original unaltered content. If you're already there, please disable the ad blocking function and exit browser mode. Lan Shi was undeterred by the situation. After all, she was a princess with a strong willpower and learning ability. Xiaqing emerged from the kitchen, holding a glass of water. He didn't say anything and simply sat on the sofa, gazing out at the pouring rain. Although it seemed quiet, Lan Shi keenly sensed the restlessness in Xiaqing's heart. It was time to step forward and comfort him. That's what Lan Shi thought, and that's what she did. She stood up and walked up to Xiaqing. Feeling his line of sight blocked, Xiaqing finally turned away from the window and looked at Lan Shi. If the rain subsides later, I'll have the driver take you home, he paused, but if it gets worse, you can stay over. Lan Shi didn't give Xiaqing a chance to finish his sentence. Remembering the comforting steps she had read online, she first leaned forward and pushed him onto the sofa. Xiaqing indeed had a surprised look on his face, and his tone slightly rose. What are you doing? But before he could delve deeper into Lan Shi's intentions, something unexpected happened. Caught off guard by Lan Shi's sudden push, Xiaqing, who hadn't prepared himself mentally, lost his grip on the glass of water, causing it to spill all over his shirt, leaving a large wet stain. Xiaqing frowned slightly, apparently preparing to get up and change his clothes. This was the moment. Lan Shi pushed Xiaqing back onto the sofa and then leaned forward, straddling his lap, and began unbuttoning his shirt. The atmosphere was supposed to be good, but... However, Lan Shi was not an ordinary human being, let alone a princess, and she simply couldn't proficiently unbutton the shirt. She spent quite a while under the astonished gaze of Xiaqing, feeling even more nervous, and in the end, she couldn't unbutton a single button. Without hesitation, Lan Shi decided to take a different approach. If she couldn't unbutton the shirt, so be it. She exerted a little force and directly tore Xia Cheng's shirt apart, no matter the method, as long as the clothes were ultimately removed. In an instant, Xia Cheng exclaimed, "What on earth are you doing?" As he spoke, he desperately struggled, trying to cover his now torn shirt and hide his body. At the same time, he attempted to push Lan Shi away. Lan Shi became a little anxious. She effortlessly suppressed Xia Cheng's movements and quickened her own fingers, saying, "I want to undress you." Xia Cheng looked bewildered. After a moment, he seemed somewhat helpless as he said, "It's okay, I don't blame you. I'll undress myself, just get off me first." "That works too." If Xia Cheng was taking the initiative to undress, it seemed that he was very willing to be comforted. Lan Shi released her hold on Xia Cheng, and he got up and went back to his room. After a moment, he returned. Indeed, his previous clothes had been removed, but how did he manage to put on a new shirt? "Why are you wearing a shirt again?" Lan Shi asked, puzzled. Xia Cheng hesitated for a moment and then replied, "What else should I wear if not a shirt?" Lan Shi pondered for a moment and said, "Wearing a shirt is fine too, some people wear clothes, just take off your pants." "What?" Lan Shi didn't have time to consider what Xia Cheng might be thinking. Initially, he seemed a little irritated, but now his emotions were even more complex, a mix of irritation and fear. What should she do? She needed to comfort him quickly. With that in mind, Lan Shi disregarded everything and straddled Xia Cheng. As the internet suggested, when comforting a man at night, it didn't matter if the upper garment was on, but the pants had to come off. However, as soon as Lan Shi's hand touched Xia Cheng's belt, he tightly grasped her hand. Disbelief was written all over his face. "Lan Shi, are you crazy? What are you doing?" Xia Cheng resisted strongly, making it difficult for Lan Shi to remove his pants. So, she decided to follow the instructions she read online and slipped her hand beneath his loosened shirt, exploring just like it described. As an Earthman, Xia Cheng paid attention to exercise, regular routines, and a balanced diet. Therefore, Lan Shi unsurprisingly felt his well-defined abdominal muscles. Full, youthful, and filled with the hormones of reproduction and mating, it piqued Lan Shi's curiosity. However, she merely touched lightly, and Xia Cheng's firm muscles tensed gradually, his breathing grew heavier. "Lan Shi." Though his tone was commanding, Xia Cheng's voice became somewhat hoarse and strange. He stopped Lan Shi's mischievous hand. "Don't touch randomly." Outside the window, thunder and lightning roared, but the room grew quiet. Xia Cheng's voice carried a suppressed heaviness and patience. "What are you up to this time?" Lan Shi appeared innocent. "I only wanted to comfort you." Xia Cheng struggled to maintain his breathing rhythm, as if trying hard to stay calm. "Release my pants first." "No, I can't." Lan Shi persisted. "The pants must come off for comfort." Xia Cheng seemed fed up. "Taking off pants for comfort? Comforting what? It's all messy and nonsensical." "Because I feel like you're not happy inside, and you're agitated." Lan Shi pondered. "I want to comfort you." As she spoke, her hand resumed its exploration, clumsily attempting to navigate through the fabric. Initially unsure, Lan Shi regained some confidence when Xia Cheng began emitting dangerously low, deep breaths, just like the internet described. This was it. Up until this point, the progress matched the steps described online for comforting a man, and Xia Cheng's reactions aligned perfectly. So, what came next? Lan Shi climbed down from Xia Cheng's leg. At this moment, Xia Cheng was pinned down on the sofa by her, and Lan Shi, in this position, knelt beside his feet, holding onto his legs. Xia Cheng wanted to stop her, but it seemed she had control over him, and her strength was unexpectedly powerful. Lan Shi loved Earth's food and was willing to try almost anything. However, even though the internet said it was edible, she hesitated. She glanced uncertainly at Xia Cheng. Something felt off. Was it really safe to eat? It didn't seem like it could be consumed. Glancing up, Xia Cheng stared at Lan Shi with reddened eyes, his voice sounding gritted and yet with a sense of false bravado. Lan Shi heard his deliberate enunciation. "Lan Shi, stand up." But Lan Shi hesitated. She felt that Xia Cheng's emotions hadn't improved in the slightest, in fact, an unhealthy flush even appeared on his face. It wasn't there just a moment ago. At this moment, Xia Cheng's cheeks were still slightly flushed, and there was a hint of redness in his earlobes. Was he sick? Didn't Earth have this thing called a fever? In this situation, wouldn't it be even more necessary for her to comfort him? She felt the need to act quickly. She appeared resolute. She knelt by Xia Cheng's feet, looked up at him with moist eyes, and spoke with an innocent tone, uttering words that stunned Xia Cheng to the core. So, the umbrella you always carry with you was actually placed here. Don't worry, leave it to me. I know how to console people. Xia Cheng knew he should maintain control, but his blood seemed to rush uncontrollably away from his brain, preventing him from thinking calmly. He now truly understood Xia Jing's intention in arranging Lanshi, someone so full of flaws, by his side. Perhaps it wasn't for the purpose of stealing any trade secrets or keeping watch over him, but instead, to tempt him. Xia Cheng had encountered many eyes filled with desire, but he had never seen eyes like Lanshi's. How could she look at him with such pure eyes, unaffected and composed, and carry out such actions as casually as drinking a glass of water? Lanshi disregarded Xia Cheng's resistance. Although he was a physically robust male in his prime, he was, after all, just an earthling and not a match for herself, the princess of planet Mai. However, Lanshi didn't expect that Xia Cheng, somehow, seemed to have a sudden change of heart. He loosened his grip on Lanshi's hand, which he had firmly held onto while vying for control of the belt. Xia Cheng simply let go, then stood up with a composed expression. I'll handle it myself. His voice once again became calm and steady, still carrying the residual warmth from before. It is said online that when comforting someone, men often gain the upper hand. That makes sense. She didn't want to waste her energy either. She rubbed her sore and achy wrist from the struggle over the belt, then watched as Xia Cheng, with a serious face, undid the belt in the quiet room. When he loosened his pants, She was still earnestly contemplating how to further comfort Xia Cheng, but he suddenly crouched down. Now his line of sight was level with Lanshi's, and he fixed his dark, unreadable eyes on her for a moment. Then, he took hold of one of Lanshi's hands and resolutely pulled her into his side. It was like an embrace. When comforting a man late at night, there is indeed a process of embracing, but why did Xia Cheng take off his belt, yet his pants remained on? She was about to correct his mistake when she felt a tight grip on her wrist. She looked down and realized that Xia Cheng had firmly fastened her wrists with a belt, securing them behind her waist. Once he had completely restrained Lanshi, Xia Cheng finally let out a sigh of relief. He lifted her up and placed her on the sofa, warning her, "Stay put, and sit here." Then he turned and went back into the room. After a moment, Xia Cheng reappeared in the living room, now wearing casual pants. He looked at Lanshi with a complex expression and asked, "How do you know about these things?" As if carefully choosing his words, Xia Cheng paused before continuing, "Didn't I tell you that you shouldn't do this? I didn't want to sleep with you." Lanshi felt wronged. "You said we shouldn't sleep together, and I listened. I just felt that you were in a bad mood, and I wanted to comfort you." Comfort? Xia Cheng frowned and then looked at Lanshi in disbelief. "You call this comforting?" He fell silent for a moment and then glanced deeply at Lanshi. "Is this what they told you? To comfort men like this?" "Well, those people online did indeed say that." Lanshi nodded. She keenly noticed that Xia Cheng, who had previously looked gloomy and unpleasant, now, after hearing these words, still had a serious expression but no longer seemed as tense. Instead, a hint of indescribable pity appeared on his face. "You mustn't do this in the future." He took a deep breath, crouched down, and looked into Lanshi's eyes. "You don't need to do this kind of comforting anymore." "But..." "There are no buts. This kind of comfort should be completely avoided in the future. You shouldn't do it to me or anyone else." Xia Cheng's tone was very serious, but Lanshi was still puzzled. She had followed the online guide exactly, and although the guide did mention that it might not work on all men, judging from Xia Cheng's reaction, it clearly worked. "Don't you want me to do this to you?" Lanshi widened her eyes. Since her hands were tied and she couldn't move, she could only use her eyes to gesture towards Xia Cheng's lower body. "Your reaction suggests that you really want to be comforted, doesn't it?" Ariad updated stirise at n/vel/bin.com. Xia Cheng adjusted his posture and looked somewhat uneasy, but his voice remained serious. People indeed have various desires, things they want to do, things they want to have. But not all things you want to do should be done because some things are illegal, and some things are not moral. He looked at Lanshi. Humans have become civilized because they can restrain themselves from doing things they want to do but shouldn't. Lan Shi tried hard to digest Xia Cheng's words but still felt confused. I read that comforting someone in that way is an expression of liking them. Can't you express liking in this way? Xia Cheng's voice was patient. Expressing affection doesn't necessarily have to involve such actions. There are many other ways to show it. Like what? For example, hugging or kissing. These are all ways to express affection. It doesn't always have to be about comforting. And not all expressions of affection require sleeping together, Xia Cheng thought for a moment and added. I see. From now on, whenever it comes to interpersonal matters and you're unsure, make sure to ask me beforehand, Xia Cheng said seriously and earnestly. Because not everyone can resist doing things they shouldn't. For instance, if you ever encounter a guy who asks you to undress, you must immediately come to me. Although Lan Shi didn't fully understand, she nodded vigorously. She knew that Xia Cheng was doing this for her own good. After all, he was the man she had conquered, and he was loyal and protective towards her. It was one of the signs of being conquered. So, you understand everything I've said, right? Xia Cheng asked, and Lan Shi nodded in response. With that, Xia Cheng stood up and untied the belt that bound Lan Shi's hands. Lan Shi's skin was delicate, and even with such a short and loose binding, there were faint red marks on her wrists. Sorry, Xia Cheng lowered his gaze. I had no choice in the heat of the moment. After saying that, he went back to the room and fetched a medical kit. He took out a jar of ointment and handed it to Lan Shi. Apply it yourself. It will help reduce the bruising. Lan Shi obediently opened the lid and applied it to her wrists. However, her movements were clumsy and disordered due to her lack of experience. Soon, it seemed like Xia Cheng couldn't bear watching anymore. He took the jar from Lan Shi's hands and said, Forget it, let me do it. He took hold of Lan Shi's wrist and carefully applied the ointment. Have you never applied medicine to yourself before? He asked. Lan Shi shook her head. Of course not. As a princess, she rarely got injured, and even if she did, there were specialized medical officers to take care of it. But when Xia Cheng finished listening to her, he looked up at her with a complicated expression. I didn't realize you had been through such hardships. No, I haven't. I haven't experienced any hardships, Lan Shi insisted. But Xia Cheng didn't give Lan Shi a chance to finish her sentence. He interrupted her, somewhat helpless. Just believe whatever you want. It seemed like he believed her. Indeed, Xia Cheng had a good understanding. He understood what she meant without her having to explain further, saving them both from the trouble of more explanations. However, Lan Shi didn't quite grasp the transition to the next topic that Xia Cheng brought up. But sometimes, there's no need to pretend to be strong, he looked into Lan Shi's eyes. If you keep acting strong for too long, everyone will believe it, and showing vulnerability isn't a bad thing. Because it's when you show vulnerability that you can find people who will willingly help and protect you. But I don't need to show vulnerability, Lan Shi tilted her head and pondered for a moment. Because in the current situation, you will protect me willingly, right? Xia Cheng was momentarily stunned. Or will you stop doing so in the future? Lan Shi stared into Xia Cheng's eyes. Can you keep protecting me like this forever? Lan Shi's expression was pure and innocent, but Xia Cheng couldn't help but look away. This made Lan Shi's face fall with disappointment. Is it not possible? It's not impossible, Xia Cheng knew he shouldn't have spoken up, but the words seemed to have a will of their own and slipped out of his mouth. He cleared his throat and added, if you're still interested in working for Qingxin, it can be arranged. After all, you're considered my employee, so it's understandable to provide some special benefits for someone like you, who belongs to a disadvantaged group. That would be great. Conquering a planet is primarily about conquering the indigenous population and establishing control on that planet. The key is to cultivate loyal confidence among the natives, ultimately leading the planet to achieve autonomy. When choosing subordinates, loyalty and unwavering guardianship are what matters. Lan Shi believed that once she regained her princess status and successfully conquered Earth, Xia Cheng could be entrusted with important responsibilities. However, since Xia Cheng was seen as a future trusted confidant for proxy rule, it was only natural to care about his emotions while cultivating a good relationship. Why aren't you happy? Lan Shi looked at Xia Cheng, attempting to console him with a gentle tone. Since you're not mad at me, why are you feeling so restless? If you don't like this way of comforting, I can try another method. Lan Shi's tone was sincere. After all, in her eyes, Xiaqing was a key person to nurture. Managing and winning over subordinates was a compulsory course for the royal family of the Woody Star. Xiaqing pursed his lips and looked out of the window at the relentless thunderstorm. Then he turned his gaze to Lan Shi, whose eyes were innocent and focused. The rain cast a haze of light in the room, making it appear dimly warm and blurring the boundaries between people. Do you think I'm restless? Yes, Lan Shi nodded. I can sense it. When a person's emotions fluctuate, their biomagnetic field also undergoes corresponding changes. Lan Shi was more sensitive to these changes than humans. However, Xiaqing had no knowledge of these things, he was simply moved internally. Clearly, Lan Shi had always lived in adversity, never receiving the love of family. She had even encountered various forms of malice and exploitation due to her own flaws. Yet, she could maintain such a clear and innocent gaze, as if she had been well protected like a princess. Although she was naive and impulsive when it came to worldly matters, she naturally possessed empathy and care for others. Xiaqing thought he had concealed his inner restlessness and emotional fluctuations well, and indeed, no one had ever noticed them before. So, how much care and attention from Lan Shi would it take for her to be able to sense his emotional changes instantly? Xiaqing didn't know the answer. Although Lan Shi wouldn't express her feelings, it was evident that he was different to her. He looked at Lan Shi, and his gaze became more complex involuntarily. Showing concern for Xiaqing, Lan Shi was merely going through the motions of caring out of curiosity. She didn't expect Xiaqing to respond, but to her surprise, after a brief and complicated silence, Xiaqing spoke up. My parents died in a car accident. But that accident could have been avoided. Under the cover of heavy rain, Xiaqing's voice sounded faintly. It was during a business trip when I encountered an extreme thunderstorm that the weather forecast failed to predict. He glanced out of the window and said, just like today. But at that time, big data and various information systems had not been well applied to meteorological research. They were also limited by the level of scientific research and data analysis capabilities at that time. In short, the weather forecast completely failed to issue a warning for that thunderstorm. The place where my parents were on a business trip happened to coincide with a large event, resulting in heavy traffic. As a result, the extreme thunderstorm caused a series of car accidents, leading to a major incident with 10 deaths and 8 injuries. Lan Shi finally began to understand, so that's why you're doing the work you do now? Yes. Xiaqing didn't say anything more, but Lan Shi gradually grasped the significance of Xiaqing's work in her state of confusion. Those seemingly dry data analysis, mathematical modeling, data organization, and database maintenance and updates seemed to be of great use. Well, I can help you. Lan Shi had never thought that her ability to predict the weather would be of much use, but at this moment, she felt a profound sense of responsibility. For the first time, she felt extremely proud of her abilities. I am indeed very useful. Lan Shi glanced at Xiaqing and continued, if you perform well, I can be by your side and help you continuously. She paused and added, but help goes both ways. You have to help me too. If there's something I don't understand, you have to answer my questions. Lan Shi blinked. Of course, as a reward, I will also bestow upon you the highest honor. Xiaqing's expression showed a hint of amusement. What honor? The honor of being my sidekick. Xiaqing's obvious speechlessness made Lan Shi unhappy. Don't be like this. Do you know how many people in this universe would like to be my sidekick? I just have to snap my fingers and there would be a queue of people willing to line up. She couldn't reveal her true identity as a princess, so she couldn't explain further. Lan Shi originally intended to complain, but she didn't expect Xiaqing to look at her for a moment, then look away and say softly, with your looks, indeed, snapping your fingers would attract a queue of people. After he finished speaking, he looked back at Lan Shi. But you can't casually recruit sidekicks. Apart from saying such things to me, don't say them to others indiscriminately. Not everyone has a moral bottom line. Xiaqing's expression was serious, but Lan Shi quickly saw through his true thoughts. She didn't realize that this guy was quite jealous. She hadn't officially become his exclusive sidekick yet, and he was already jealous and didn't want her to recruit other sidekicks. But she could understand all of this. After all, her noble princess temperament seemed to make him feel threatened. So Lan Shi generously patted Xiaqing's shoulder. All right then, it's settled. But you have to work hard. She emphasized seriously, you have to perform well. So, can you peel an orange for me first? Xia Cheng's face revealed an incredulous expression. Can't you peel it yourself? I agreed to help you with things you don't understand or can't do, but that doesn't mean you can command me for everything. Lan Shi looked at Xia Cheng pitifully. But I dislike fruits with peels. Can you please help me peel it? No, Xia Cheng firmly refused. You peel it yourself. He did sympathize with Lan Shi and wanted to help her out of compassion, but it didn't mean he would be at her beck and call. To Xia Cheng, Lan Shi was like a charity project, and he didn't want her to misunderstand that. Lan Shi grumbled unwillingly, but I've seen many men peel oranges for women. Well, those are other men, and the relationship between them and the women is different from ours. Xia Cheng pursed his lips and looked at Lan Shi. Besides, those men are those men. I won't peel oranges for women. Men shouldn't degrade themselves like that. I can only understand men who peel oranges for their own family members or disabled individuals. In Mui Star, Lan Shi had never eaten oranges before, so naturally, she didn't know how to peel them. But unable to resist her craving, after being flatly rejected by Xia Cheng, she reluctantly picked up the orange from the coffee table and tore and bit at the peel clumsily, using both hands and feet to deal with it. Soon, the orange peel was clumsily torn by Lan Shi, and juice started to flow out. The air was filled with the fragrant aroma of oranges. Lan Shi really liked the sweet and sour taste of oranges and couldn't help but stick out her tongue and lick the dripping orange juice from her fingers. Then, her orange was suddenly snatched away by Xia Cheng. Lan Shi was furious. She had only peeled 1/3 of it, so why did Xia Cheng come and take away her victorious fruit? Just as she was about to get angry, she saw Xia Cheng quickly peel the remaining 2/3 of the orange peel and handed it back to her. No one took your orange, here you go. Lan Shi puffed her cheeks and muttered, I didn't say anything. You didn't say it, but your eyes were filled with your emotions. Isn't your heart accusing me of snatching your orange? Xia Cheng looked at her, his expression somewhat unnatural. Lan Shi stuffed half of the orange into her mouth. Because you said you wouldn't peel oranges for women, so isn't that taking my orange away? Xia Cheng's expression became serious. From now on, when peeling oranges, you're not allowed to lick your fingers. After saying that, he took a tissue without waiting for a response and unceremoniously wiped the remaining orange juice off Lan Shi's fingers, his movements somewhat rough. Lan Shi understood it all too well. This man must have wanted to take her orange for himself. That's why he looked so awkward and unnatural. She had hit the nail on the head with his true intentions. But I couldn't resist. It's like how some people can't resist licking the lid of a yogurt container when they open it. It's just a subconscious behavior that's sometimes hard to control. Then you shouldn't eat oranges anymore, Xia Cheng said sternly. There are plenty of other fruits. Choose something else. Lan Shi found it utterly perplexing. But I like eating oranges. Even if you asked me to peel it myself, I still did. Don't peel it yourself next time. Xia Cheng, who had just insisted on peeling the orange by himself, directly denied himself without any psychological obstacles. He looked at Lan Shi and asserted his authority, if I'm here next time, I'll peel it for you. If I'm not, you better not eat it. Why? Because you peel the orange so poorly and can't resist licking your fingers. It's not a healthy sight, and it's not suitable if there are young children around. How is it unhealthy to peel an orange by oneself? Anyway, that's how it is. Xia Cheng, as if issuing a final ultimatum, glanced at Lan Shi. Eating fewer oranges is good for you and others. Eating too many oranges can cause internal heat, so control yourself and eat less. However, despite his words, under Lan Shi's pleading gaze, Xia Cheng peeled another orange for her. I've peeled enough oranges for you for the week. I'll peel more for you when you come to study next week. Upon hearing that there were oranges to eat, Lan Shi's eyes brightened again. Xia Cheng, you're so kind. Strangely enough, Xia Cheng, who had been easily peeling oranges, felt a bit uncomfortable after hearing Lan Shi's words. Even the peeling became less skillful than before. He gave Lan Shi a warning glare, a mix of severity and embarrassment. Not only should you eat fewer oranges from now on, but also refrain from saying such cheesy things. Don't think you can achieve everything by flattery. After he finished speaking, he stuffed the freshly peeled orange into Lan Shi's hand. Eat your orange and speak less. In fact, Xia Cheng didn't need to say anything. Lan Shi automatically fell silent. The sweet and tangy juice of the orange filled her taste buds, and she had no desire to say anything more. Suddenly, she felt that Earth was truly wonderful, and the fruits on Earth were fantastic. The men on Earth were pretty good too. Like Xia Qing, who peeled oranges for her. For the original unmodified content, please visit Laughing Beauty under Wenshui official website. If you have already done so, please disable ad blocking and exit browser mode. In the end, after eating 6 oranges, the thunderstorm outside the window subsided. Since it was late at night, Xia Qing didn't bother the driver anymore and drove Lan Shi back to the staff dormitory himself. After giving her some miscellaneous instructions, Xia Qing finally left. Lan Shi didn't have to peel the oranges herself and ate so many of them. She felt extremely satisfied and felt that her life on Earth was becoming more comfortable. This feeling was reinforced the next day when Wan Yan stopped Lan Shi at work to chat. Lan Shi, tomorrow is a day off. Do you have any plans? How about going camping and having a picnic with me? We can also watch an outdoor movie together. There's a lively outdoor amusement park there. I've already bought camping equipment and food ingredients, and I've got the tickets for the campsite. You don't need to bring anything, just bring yourself. Xia Qing had mentioned that Lan Shi should make more trustworthy friends. Lan Shi looked at Wan Yan, who had a gentle and caring expression. After all, they were colleagues in the company, and Lan Shi was recruited by Xia Qing himself, so she must be reliable. As for the outdoor movie and the outdoor amusement park, Lan Shi hadn't been to any of them since she arrived on Earth. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't curious. Lan Shi thought for a moment and nodded quickly. Wan Yan had been feeling a bit restless lately. After accidentally revealing to Xia Qing that Lan Shi was going to Jinlin Club, nothing seemed to happen. Xia Qing didn't show any obvious change in attitude towards Lan Shi. In fact, he seemed even closer to her. It was as if he didn't trust Lan Shi to be alone. The opportunities for Xia Qing to accompany Lan Shi on receptions and visits visibly increased. This couldn't go on. Wan Yan felt that she had completely figured out Lan Shi's plan. Since she was going to Jinlin Club and now she was fishing for Xia Qing, wasn't she trying to use her beauty to climb up the social ladder? Unfortunately, climbing up the ladder wasn't that easy. Although Xia Qing didn't explicitly draw a clear boundary and reject Lan Shi, there was one thing that gave Wan Yan some peace of mind. After all, Xia Qing wasn't easily fooled. It was clear that he wasn't really with Lan Shi. Wan Yan had seen people like Lan Shi before, narrow-minded and impatient. It was evident from the fact that she was fishing for Xia Qing while also looking for other options at Jinlin Club. Lan Shi was most likely using a broad net strategy, not the type that firmly set one target. For someone like Lan Shi, perhaps the ultimate outcome didn't matter as long as it helped her achieve a social leap. Therefore, in similar circumstances, she would definitely choose to concentrate firepower on easier targets. After all, in such matters, stability was key. If Lan Shi truly fell deeply in love with Xia Qing and genuinely saw him as someone special, Wan Yan, although feeling unhappy and angry, would be willing to compete with Lan Shi on a level playing field. If she lost, she would reluctantly accept it with a few grumbles. But if Lan Shi was the type of woman who didn't even realize how good Xia Qing was and just saw him as another fish in her pond, Wan Yan couldn't let Xia Qing fall into her hands. Even if Xia Qing didn't choose Wan Yan in the end, she still hoped that his partner would be an outstanding girl and not a manipulative woman. Wan Yan felt a sense of obligation to step forward and eliminate Lan Shi, a woman with ulterior motives, thanks to Xia Qing's kindness and the fact that she hadn't encountered many women before who could see through Lan Shi's tactics. So, you want me to pretend to be an easy target, a naive rich second generation, who is considerate and gentle, to test her loyalty to Xia Qing, your senior? Wei Yijuan's question brought Wan Yan back to her thoughts, and she smiled, saying, that's right. She had ways to deal with Lan Shi. Wei Yijuan was Wan Yan's high school classmate and studied at the drama college and university, making him somewhat of a professional in the field. He had a tall and handsome appearance, with a pair of eyes that always exuded a deep affection. Unfortunately, the competition in this industry was fierce, and after graduation, Wei Yijuan only managed to find minor roles in various drama productions, without making significant achievements or having stable income. You can just treat this as another acting job, can't you? Wan Yan smiled and pursed her lips. I'll pay you the highest hourly rate. No problem, Wei Yijuan replied confidently. Don't worry, even though my looks may not stand out in our industry, in ordinary life, I'm still a top-level handsome guy. There's no woman I can't handle. He glanced at Wan Yan and continued, besides, I have a supporting team. When you introduce me to that woman and find an excuse to leave, I'll be alone with her. I've already arranged a scene where we encounter some hooligans. I'm familiar with those extras. With this performance, I'll instantly build a trustworthy image in her eyes. Then I'll take her to watch an open-air romance movie in a tent. With the atmosphere set, I'll take the opportunity to hold her hand ambiguously. Finally, I'll treat her to some sweet dessert like ice cream and then persuade her to go up the small mountain near the camping site to watch the sunset. The atmosphere will become even more romantic after the sunset, and as the temperature drops, she'll probably be tired too. I'll thoughtfully lend her my coat and carry her down the mountain. As Wei Yijuan spoke, he winked at Wang Yan. Following this process, along with presenting myself as a rich second generation, if she has any ill intentions, she will definitely see me as an easier target and won't bother with Xiaqing. She'll immediately shift her focus to me. Finally, Wang Yan revealed the first relaxed smile she had shown in days. Indeed, packaging Wei Yijuan as a rich second generation who had a milder and more approachable personality than Xiaqing and allowing him to subtly express his fondness for Lan Shi would undoubtedly make Lan Shi reconsider her options. When Wei Yijuan and Lan Shi would pretend to establish a relationship, Lan Shi would surely give up on Xiaqing, a bone she had been gnawing on for so long. It was an unavoidable solution. Because if Lan Shi genuinely liked Xiaqing, she would never immediately switch her affections to another man appearing to show interest in her. After all, Wang Yan has received attention from outstanding men over the years, but her heart belongs solely to Xiaqing. She doesn't even spare a glance for anyone else. As long as this attempt fails, it will prove Lan Shi's sincere feelings for Xiaqing, and Wang Yan won't interfere any further. But just in case, if Lan Shi betrays Xiaqing so easily during this simple test, Wang Yan will definitely not stand idly by. If this loyalty test doesn't pass, Wang Yan decides to immediately tell Xiaqing everything and warn Lan Shi to stay away from him. In this way, Wang Yan and Wei Yijuan finalized their collaboration, but Lan Shi remained oblivious. The next day, Lan Shi arrived at the agreed meeting place, filled with anticipation. Wang Yan was also punctual, but she brought a friend along. Lan Shi, this is my good friend Wei Yijuan. Since camping requires preparations like tents and camping chairs, and he is a wealthy and leisurely camping enthusiast, he volunteered to help us with the heavy lifting. Let's exchange contact information, everyone. As soon as Wang Yan saw Lan Shi, she warmly approached and took hold of her hand, introducing Wei Yijuan to Lan Shi. Wei Yijuan appeared tall and sunny. When he saw Lan Shi, he first stared at her face in a daze, then looked at Wang Yan with some confusion. Wang Yan cleared her throat and furrowed her brow, and only then did Wei Yijuan recover, smiling shyly at Lan Shi as if waking from a dream. Sorry, actually, besides camping, I'm quite introverted and don't have much contact with girls. I'm not good with words. If I say something that upsets you, please tell me directly. I'll change. This person is quite sincere. Lan Shi nodded affirmatively. So shall we drive together to the camping site at the foot of the mountain? Just as Wei Yijuan was about to go and start the car, Wang Yan suddenly looked troubled after receiving a text message. Lan Shi, my company has assigned me some urgent work, and I have to go back to the office immediately. I'm really sorry. You go with Wei Yijuan first, and I'll try to catch up after finishing my work. Lan Shi felt reluctant. She thought Wang Yan was genuinely a good person. She had prepared so much camping gear, all at her own expense, and now she couldn't make it. Wang Yan even earnestly urged her to have a good time. Although they weren't related by blood and didn't have influential backgrounds, Wang Yan had become a true friend to her. This time, Wang Yan had chosen a relatively niche camping location, with beautiful scenery and not many people. However, it was quite far and remote. Besides driving, there was no public transportation available. And so, Lan Shi got into Wei Yijuan's car. Wei Yijuan had specially rented a Porsche and was dressed in branded clothing, presenting himself as a rich young man who didn't lack money at first glance. He was very satisfied with this part-time job of his. Initially, he thought the girl Wang Yan wanted him to test wouldn't be particularly attractive, but he didn't expect Lan Shi to have such looks, a type that he would willingly spend money to pursue at a bar. Wei Yijuan was very satisfied, and he even had some genuine feelings. It wouldn't hurt to have some fun with this Lan Shi. That's why he was particularly invested in his performance today. Sorry, I knew that Wang Yan would bring a new friend today, so I definitely chose a better car. His tone was natural and unruffled, as if he was already an expert at this. Wei Yijuan's approach almost never failed. Usually, at the next step, the girl riding with him would show a look of surprise and admiration, subtly hinting about what other cars he had at home and whether they could go for a drive together in the future. As expected, she didn't disappoint. Her expression paused for a moment, and then she looked around with great curiosity. Wei Yijun felt proud. You've never been in a Porsche before, have you? Sure enough, she nodded. However, just as Wei Yijun was waiting for her praise, she furrowed her brows in a serious manner and evaluated it as if she were judging in court. She said, this one is really not good. The space inside the car is too small, and the chassis isn't as stable when driving. At this point, she thought of Xie Chang's car and said, I've always ridden in a Rolls-Royce. I've never been in a Porsche before. I didn't realize Porsches were so bad. Do you have a Rolls-Royce at home? I'm more used to that. Do you have the money? You can buy one. She recalled the advice Xie Chang had given her about paying attention to social situations and making sure her answers were relevant. She felt that her response was completely on point and didn't involve any unrelated topics. However, for some reason, after she warmly responded to Wei Yijun, he fell silent, and the atmosphere in the car became somewhat tense. But soon, the tense atmosphere was interrupted. Several motorcycles appeared from some small road with a roaring sound and positioned themselves on both sides of Wei Yijun's car. One of the motorcycles quickly accelerated and ultimately blocked the front of the car, creating a situation where they were surrounded. Wei Yijun had to stop the car urgently. Hey! Get out! All of you! If you don't, we'll smash the car. One of the motorcycle riders, with a fierce expression, started banging on the car window. She didn't understand what was happening. Before she could ask, Wei Yijun, with a serious expression, said, We've encountered a gang of motorcycle hooligans. Wei Yijun and She were passing through an area with urban villages on their way to the camping site. This area was a mix of good and bad elements and happened to be adjacent to the city and a port. There were often delinquent youths and hooligans hanging around. Half a month ago, a group of motorcycle hooligans even appeared, extorting money from vehicles that got lost or accidentally entered their territory. This was indeed a true incident that had made the news. Although the police had long since received tips and apprehended the group of hooligans, it didn't stop Wei Yijun from taking advantage of the situation and hiring extras to play along. Coming to the rescue in a dangerous situation and saving a beauty was a classic move that captured people's hearts. Wei Yijun looked at Shi with a determined and trustworthy gaze, preparing to deliver a line like Don't be afraid, I'm here to protect you. However, before he could speak, Shi beat him to it and said, Don't be afraid, I'm here to protect you. After finishing her line, Shi opened the car door and walked out, taking the car keys and locking the door behind her. Hey! What are you doing? According to the script, after a passionate speech, Wei Yijun was supposed to leave Shi in the car for her safety, while he got out and negotiated with the thugs. Eventually, he would fight them to protect Shi, get slightly injured, and successfully drive the thugs away. But the situation now. Shi suspected that she had said something wrong earlier, causing an awkward atmosphere inside the car. However, something she had hoped for finally happened. She could finally seize the opportunity to show her skills and demonstrate her kindness. Friends are supposed to help each other. Wei Yijun is Wang Yan's friend, and roughly speaking, a friend of a friend is also a friend. Shi got out of the car and locked Wei Yijun inside. The previously arrogant thugs seemed somewhat surprised and stunned, looking at Wei Yijun inside the car. At this point, they actually had the audacity to target Wei Yijun. Shi didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with this group of thugs. She had a movie to catch, and she couldn't be late. So, she swiftly used her wrist, delivering quick punches that sent them all flying. Brushing off the non-existent dust from her hands, Shi calmly returned to the car. We can go now. Wei Yijun seemed greatly affected by the appearance of these thugs, showing significant emotional fluctuations. He stared wide-eyed at the thugs lying on the ground outside the car, their groans and moans filling the air. His voice trembled as he asked, How did you do that? It was just something I did casually, Shi reassured him with a smile. It didn't require much effort. But, isn't this a bit unethical? They seem injured. Shouldn't we call an ambulance? No, don't worry. I didn't hit them hard. At most, it's just some superficial bruises and minor internal bleeding. All test NOVL on novelben/.cm. Wei Yijuan appeared quite uneasy. How do you know it's only minor bleeding? They fell pretty hard. What if they end up partially paralyzed or something? Shouldn't we? I know, don't worry. I have experience in fighting people. I've never hit someone hard enough to leave them partially paralyzed. Regardless of Lan Shi's reassurances, Wei Yijuan still seemed very anxious and concerned. After a moment of thought, Lan Shi understood his worries. He must be afraid that she didn't hit the thugs hard enough and they would get up and retaliate against them. Then, make a U-turn. As expected, Lan Shi's guess was correct. After she said that, Wei Yijuan immediately showed a relieved expression and obediently turned the steering wheel. Lan Shi felt that she was starting to understand the psychology of Earthlings more and more these days. So she looked at Wei Yijuan and promised convincingly, "Turn back, I'll give them a few more punches." Wei Yijuan was deeply moved by the bond between him and Lan Shi. As soon as Lan Shi finished speaking, Wei Yijuan's hands slipped on the steering wheel and even his whole body seemed to tremble slightly. "Are you turning back to teach them a lesson?" "Yes," Lan Shi nodded. "I will make sure those few hooligans can never seek revenge." "Don't worry. It won't take much effort to throw a few punches. I assure you, I will beat them half to death, enough to teach them a lesson but not let them continue their wrongdoing. But this is a society governed by the rule of law. It's not right to do this." Lan Shi smiled cunningly and whispered, "I've checked. This road is quite secluded, with no surveillance cameras. In a society governed by the rule of law, evidence matters." Thanks to Xie Chang's advice, Lan Shi had taken many lessons and now had a good grasp of the new social norms and common knowledge. Unfortunately, for some reason, Wei Yijuan, who had just firmly turned back, suddenly changed the direction of the steering wheel. He started driving forward again, clearly no longer intending to go back. He appeared very nervous, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "I've thought about it. After our camping trip, we still want to catch a movie, and time is tight. It's better to arrive on time. After all, being late and missing the beginning of the movie can make the whole story confusing. Let's not go back and hurry to our destination." Lan Shi pondered for a moment and agreed, "Then let's go ahead. Shall we take this road on our way back? In case they are still there when we return, I can teach them another lesson." "We won't take this road on our way back." Wei Yijuan wiped the sweat off his forehead and stammered, "This road is bumpy, and the security is not good. There's another shortcut on the way back." "We won't take this road." Lan Shi didn't pay much attention to this little incident on the road, but Wei Yijuan seemed busy with something. As soon as they arrived at the camping site, before he could even set up the tent, he received several urgent phone calls in quick succession. He seemed to have encountered some difficulties, judging by the worried expression on his face throughout the conversations. "I understand, don't worry. I will definitely compensate you and provide extra money." "Nutritional supplements? Do you really need that much?" "I'll cover your transportation expenses for going back." "The ambulance bill? Why is it so high?" Wei Yijuan's voice was filled with frustration. "You people are really demanding." After finishing the phone calls, Wei Yijuan was in a gloomy mood. He had only intended to earn some extra money, but now he had to bear the cost of medical expenses for the extras. Was this woman a devil? How could she be so strong? But they had come this far. Wang Yan had also promised to give him a huge bonus if things went well. That would cover the financial loss from the extras' medical expenses. Although Lan Shi was undeniably beautiful, Wei Yijuan couldn't help but recall the scene where she effortlessly fought and handled things like cutting vegetables. He immediately lost all romantic feelings for her. He set aside thoughts of pleasure and displayed 100% professionalism as he looked deeply into Lan Shi's eyes. Although he couldn't play the hero and save the beauty, that's okay. He could take a different approach and go down the path of being considerate and warm. "You just rest here, I'll set up the tent," Wei Yijuan said. After speaking, Wei Yijuan diligently worked by himself, huffing and puffing, and finally finished setting up the tent and arranging the camping chairs. Showing reliability at a critical moment is also very attractive to girls. After such a passionate and intense effort, Wei Yijuan was feeling a bit hot. Naturally, he proceeded to the next step according to the script. He took off his jacket, revealing a well-proportioned figure highlighted by his vest. His physique was good, looking slim when dressed but muscular when undressed. At this moment, he had some sweat on him, making him absolutely sexy and full of masculinity. Wei Yijuan tidied his hair and then draped the jacket over his arm, walking towards Lan Shi. He deliberately leaned down, creating a scene that made people blush and their hearts race, and whispered warmly in Lan Shi's ear, "It's quite hot. Would you like to take off your jacket too?" Wei Yijuan continued with a smile, "I've finished setting up the tent and it got a bit hot while moving around, so I took mine off." He shook the jacket in his arm, saying, "I can see that your face is a bit red too. If you're feeling hot, why not take it off? I can help you carry it together." He pointed to the tent he had set up not far away and said, "Then we can go inside the tent together." But Lan Shi didn't pay any attention to what Wei Yijuan was saying. She glared at the clothes Wei Yijuan had taken off in his hand and looked up at him, asking, "Did you just ask me to take off my clothes?" Wei Yijuan paused for a moment and nodded, "Yes." "And you took yours off too?" "Huh? Yes." Without giving Wei Yijuan a chance to speak, Lan Shi bombarded him with rapid-fire questions, "And you want both of us to go inside that tent alone?" "Yes." Looking at Wei Yijuan, who appeared completely natural, Lan Shi was quite shocked. She was still too naive. Earthlings were so cunning. Earthlings as good as Xiaqing were truly rare. She never expected that this Wei Yijuan would actually fit the description of what Xiaqing called a scheming earthling. Everything he was doing now perfectly matched the bad tricks of an earthling, as Xiaqing had described. An earthling man, taking off his own clothes and asking her to do the same, and then guiding her to a confined space for private interaction. As for his leering gaze, although Lan Shi didn't understand the term leering, it was obviously different from that of a normal person. This was definitely what Xiaqing referred to as a leering gaze. Xiaqing said that people like him were scoundrels who wanted to harm her. Fortunately, she had gone to Xiaqing for lessons and had long seen through the tricks of such people. Wei Yijuan employed all his tricks, showcasing his charm from all angles, especially his eyes, which exerted an extraordinary force, looking at Lan Shi with deep affection and focus. He waited for the girl in front of him to surrender, even if she didn't blush or her heart didn't race, at the very least, her eyes should be unable to meet his gaze due to the fluttering of her heart, like a young deer in confusion. Wei Yijuan regained a bit of confidence and continued to gaze at Lan Shi with deep affection, expecting her shy gratitude. However, to his surprise, she suddenly stood up. Was she too overwhelmed with excitement? It seemed that his actions had caused quite a fluctuation in her emotions, indicating that his approach was effective. He thought he was on the right track. But before Wei Yijuan could fully rejoice, he felt a strong force on his collar as Lan Shi grabbed hold of it, almost lifting him off the ground. "Who allowed you to take off your clothes? Do you want to die?" Lan Shi glared at him with anger. Wei Yijuan was taken aback and struggled to free himself. "What are you doing?" Fortunately, Xiaqing had trained him beforehand, and Lan Shi was well aware of the tricks this earthling was playing. With a cold expression, she warned, "Don't think I don't understand your tricks. You're not allowed to undress. Give me your clothes to wear." "But I'm really hot." Lan Shi raised her hand and threatened, "Wear your clothes or get beaten." Wei Yijuan initially wanted to resist, but when he saw Lan Shi raising her hand, he reluctantly buttoned up his jacket after she released his collar. Fearful of any further mischief from him, Lan Shi raised her hand again and said angrily, "Button up all the buttons." After Wei Yijuan finished buttoning up, Lan Shi was still not satisfied. She pointed to the nearby tent and commanded, "Take it down." This time, Wei Yijuan couldn't help but exclaim, "I just set it up." "No, take it down," Lan Shi said expressionlessly. "Take it down or get beaten. Choose one." With the removal of these elements, the danger was eliminated. Now it was safe. Very safe. Under the scorching sun, Wei Yijuan was forced to wear his jacket, sweating profusely. He was also enslaved to dismantle the tent he had just painstakingly set up. He regretted it deeply, but he couldn't withstand Lan Shi standing there, hands on hips, supervising. After they finally finished dismantling the tent, Wei Yijuan couldn't hold back his frustration. He grumbled, "I've never seen anyone dismantle a tent while camping." Little did he know that his complaint only brought more misfortune upon himself. Lan Shi listened to his words, pondered for a moment while supporting her chin, and then a look of sudden realization appeared on her face. She looked at Wei Yijuan, her eyes sparkling, and said, "I've come up with a new idea." Lan Shi approvingly gave Wei Yijuan a thumbs up. "You're right, how can camping be complete without a tent? Set up the tent again." As long as two people don't stay in the same tent at the same time, there won't be any private enclosed space for the two of them. They can set up the tent by themselves. Wei Yijuan can stay outside. Wei Yijuan was utterly miserable. He was forced to set up and dismantle the tent repeatedly, and in the end, he was compelled to stand in the scorching weather wearing a thick coat as a punishment. Meanwhile, the instigator of all this lay in the cool tent, eating fruit and humming songs. The woman before him was undoubtedly beautiful, but she clearly had some issues in her head. However, the other party was too strong physically, and Wei Yijuan didn't dare to engage in a direct confrontation. He took advantage of Lan Shi's relaxed vigilance, claimed he needed to use the restroom, and then swiftly started the car and drove away. He wouldn't earn this part-time money from Wang Yan. Wearing such a thick coat in the sweltering weather and being forced to do physical labor for most of the day, Wei Yijuan felt his sweat pouring down like a waterfall, and he became dizzy. If he waited any longer, he might suffer from heat stroke. This wasn't merely about money. If he stayed any longer, he might lose his life. Lan Shi sat inside the tent, enjoying the breeze and eating snacks, feeling very content. However, when she finished all the snacks she brought and the sun was about to set, Wei Yijuan, who claimed he was going to the restroom, hadn't returned. After all, he was Wang Yan's friend, so Lan Shi decided to give Wei Yijuan a chance to make amends. But when Lan Shi checked the time, realizing that if he didn't come back soon, they would miss the outdoor movie, she called Wei Yijuan. However, instead of gratitude, her well-intentioned and magnanimous gesture was met with Wei Yijuan's furious and hysterical voice on the other end of the line. Are you crazy? Who would watch an outdoor movie with you? Get yourself treated if you're insane. Don't bother me again in the future. Before Lan Shi could say anything, the call was abruptly ended, and she couldn't reach Wei Yijuan when she tried calling again. She attempted to call Wang Yan, but Wang Yan was probably busy and didn't answer. Calling Liang Di, he couldn't come as he was taking care of Chaowen at the hospital and couldn't leave. Calling Wang Jiqiang, he did answer, but it was as good as not answering at all. On the other end of the phone, Wang Jiqiang whispered hesitantly, "Princess, I really can't come. Last time, my wife suspected I went to KTV to find a princess, so I've been under house arrest lately." The sun hadn't completely set yet, but the sky was gradually darkening, and the weather was turning cold. Lan Shi keenly sensed that if she waited any longer, there would be a heavy rain here. She had to hurry back. But this campsite was in chaos, and Lan Shi, who had been preoccupied with eating snacks, now looked around and realized that the few other groups of camping enthusiasts who were already scarce had long since left. Moreover, there wasn't even public transportation available here, and when Lan Shi tried using a ride-hailing app, she couldn't get a car at all. However, it didn't matter. Lan Shi was confident, as on Earth, she still had a reliable Earthling whom she had conquered. With this thought in mind, Lan Shi took out her phone. Meanwhile, in a villa hundreds of miles away, Xia Cheng, who had just finished an international business conference and was preparing to enjoy a moment of leisure, received the following text message. "Xia Cheng, can you come pick me up? Bring your Rolls-Royce along." Xia Cheng had never seen anyone as presumptuous as Lan Shi. He took out his phone and coldly replied with a few words. "Don't have time. Can't come." The sympathy he felt for Lan Shi should not mean she loses all sense of boundaries with him. Xia Cheng felt he had done nothing wrong, he did not want to give Lan Shi any unrealistic expectations. Yet soon after he sent his reply, Lan Shi called him. "You responded, so you must not be in a meeting, right?" Xia Cheng pursed his lips. "No meeting, but I'm not your driver and can't be on standby for you 24 hours a day." A strong gust seemed to dissipate Lan Shi's voice on the other end, making her usually crisp and clear tone sound weak. "Where are you?" "I'm at a camping ground." Xia Cheng couldn't help but raise his voice. "Why did you go there?" "I came camping with someone else, but they drove off in their car. Everyone else is busy and I can't get a taxi." Lan Shi paused before adding, "There's no one else here now and it looks like it's about to rain." Glancing out his window at the darkening sky, Xia Cheng rubbed his brow. "Send me your location." As if puzzled, Lan Shi responded from the other end, "Why?" Xia Cheng was exasperated. She was trying to take advantage of him. "Why do you think?" "So I can come get you." "Then you have to come in the Rolls-Royce." Amused, Xia Cheng retorted, "It would be good enough if I came at all." "And you expect the Rolls-Royce?" Choosy and materialistic, people shouldn't be spoiled. And they certainly shouldn't judge others by their wealth and look down on those less fortunate, while expecting to ride in a Rolls-Royce themselves wherever they go. Instantly, Lan Shi's voice took on a pitiable tone. Oh, all right. Xiaqing took a deep breath and flatly said, it's not that I won't let you take a ride, but the Rolls-Royce driver has a family matter to tend to and has gone home already. Then you. I'm not used to driving the Rolls. I wouldn't handle it well. Hearing this news, Lan Shi felt a twinge of disappointment. But the fact that Xiaqing was willing to come get her meant a lot. She was about to thank him when Xiaqing cleared his throat and added, read lat stchers on n/v//l, b, I, dot. cm. But I will try. With my driving skills and ability to learn quickly, driving it shouldn't pose too much difficulty. And remember to bring some peeled oranges. I'm starving. I want to eat oranges. This demand was firmly rejected by Xiaqing. Today I'm only the driver, not your nanny. Oh, all right, unpeeled it is. As long as she could ride in the Rolls-Royce. As Lan Shi eagerly awaited his arrival, Xiaqing finally showed up in his Rolls half an hour later, his expression less than cheerful. Not only had he brought the Rolls-Royce, he had also peeled oranges for her. Sure enough, as soon as Lan Shi opened the car door and climbed inside, Xiaqing handed her the oranges and immediately began interrogating her. Who did you come camping with? Why did they just abandon you here? Lan Shi had no choice but to briefly explain from the beginning how she met Wei Yijuan through Wang Yan, and how Wei Yijuan eventually ditched her and left. In summary, she said, I took your advice to communicate more with others. Wang Yan is trustworthy. Our original plan was for the three of us to come out here together. I didn't intend to be alone with a male stranger. Xiaqing listened with a frown, then looked up and asked, with Wang Yan not here, seeing how you look, just the two of you, a man and woman alone at a remote campground with a tent, he was still willing to leave? He just abandoned you here and left? Recalling the matter, Lan Shi felt quite aggrieved. Not only did he leave, he also scolded me for being sick. Xiaqing had seemed very distrustful of Lan Shi's account, yet surprisingly, with this one line from her, he fell silent. He looked at Lan Shi meaningfully and sympathetically, no longer pressing her with further questions. It seemed he believed her. Since Xiaqing was convinced, Lan Shi felt no need to mention the man trying to undress her. In short, Wei Yijuan was obviously a bad person, no further explanation from Lan Shi was necessary. Indeed, Xiaqing thought the same. Men like him are trash. After a moment of silence, Xiaqing spoke again. He looked at Lan Shi, his tone certain and reassuring. You're not sick. But I really am a bit of a hassle, Lan Shi admitted uncharacteristically. You're so busy, yet I called you out here to pick me up. Can't be helped. Though he had arrived annoyed, Xiaqing's displeasure had now completely vanished. You can call me when you need to. After all, reliable people are hard to find in this world, he said matter-of-factly. After a pause he added casually, so don't feel too bad. You're normal, there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is that man who harbored ill intentions yet lacked the manners of a gentleman. He abandoned you here just because he felt ashamed when he discovered your autism spectrum disorder. Xiaqing had felt irritated at having to drive all the way out to this remote suburb. But after hearing Lan Shi's account, his irritation had completely dissipated. Lan Shi was truly pitiable. As a vulnerable group, who knew how much difficulty and setbacks she would encounter trying to integrate into normal social interactions. For ordinary people like himself, this was hard to imagine. With just a few words, Lan Shi hadn't fully explained the whole story, yet Xiaqing understood everything. Most likely Lan Shi's looks had attracted Wang Yan's friend, and he brought her out here harboring indecent thoughts about being alone with her. But upon interacting with her, he discovered her autism spectrum disorder, scolded her for being sick, and fled in anger and shame, abandoning her here alone. Lan Shi was completely the victim. The frustration Xiaqing had felt on the drive over had vanished into thin air. What was the point in blaming such an unfortunate, pitiable soul like Lan Shi? Other than himself, she sadly had few reliable, kind-hearted people in her life. Did you have any other plans for today besides camping? At the mention of this, Lan Shi became regretful. There was supposed to be an outdoor movie, but I was so busy calling people to come get me that I missed it. We were also going to hike up to watch the sunset, and there's an amusement park with lots of fun attractions I didn't get to try, now everything is closed for the night. Xiaqing checked the time. Let's go. I'll take you to see the sunset. Without looking back, Xiaqing walked on ahead, his voice drifting back on the wind to Lan Shi's ears. We won't make the outdoor movie today, but next time I'll take you. If we hurry we can still catch the sunset before it rains. Lan Shi instantly perked up. You're really taking me to see the sunset? What about the amusement park? Can we go play at the amusement park? Those rides look really fun, Lan Shi went on excitedly. The ones where people sit in cars that spin and swing through the air, and everyone is laughing and screaming. And the merry-go-round with horses, they look like fun. Xiaqing froze for a moment, seeming to carefully choose his words. After a while he looked at Lan Shi and gently asked, Are you talking about roller coasters, pirate ships, and carousels? Lan Shi had an epiphany. Yes, exactly. Those are the names. They just slipped my mind. Yet for some reason, under his increasingly complex gaze, she felt compelled to ask, Haven't you ever been to an amusement park? Warning bells went off in Lan Shi's mind. Was it not normal on Earth to have never gone to an amusement park? Doing her best to appear nonchalant, she quickly responded, Of course I've gone. It's just been so long I forgot some things. Little did she know that her flustered insistence would do little to convince him. To Xiaqing it seemed more a case of bravado, likely no one had ever been willing to take her. I'll take you to an amusement park next time. This time Lan Shi made no pretense. Eyes shining, she exclaimed, Really? Remembering herself, she gave a small cough. I mean, it has been a really long time since I last went. I have kind of wanted to go again. Xiaqing gave her a look but said no more, turning and continuing up the mountain path. With high spirits, Lan Shi hurried to catch up with Xiaqing. Together they made their way up the mountain. Climbing the mountain, Lan Shi looked at the scenery that didn't seem high but was still quite tiring to climb. However, upon reaching the summit and seeing the landscape ahead, she felt it was all worthwhile. Overlooking the lakes and mountains below, raising her head Lan Shi could see the swirling mist and returning birds, while the sky's edge held a setting red sun. It was a scene completely different from Mui's star. Gazing at Earth's rivers and mountains from this vantage point for the first time, Lan Shi suddenly felt the Earth was beautiful. And Earth people were not bad either. Lan Shi's gaze moved from the sunset to Xiaqing standing beside her. He had just taken a quick work call and now stood with his back to Lan Shi, speaking softly on the phone. The glow of the setting sun shone unrestrainedly on him, seeming to coat him in a layer of warm sugar frosting. In the sunset glow, Lan Shi could see Xiaqing's unruly tufts of hair that stuck out slightly, fluttering lightly in the mountain breeze, remarkably similar to her beloved earth fruit, kiwi fruit. It was then that Xiaqing finally ended his call and turned to face Lan Shi's direction. Lan Shi's gaze collided unexpectedly with his. Xiaqing was the first to look away. He kicked a pebble on the ground. Weren't you here to watch the sunset? Why are you looking at me? Lan Shi beckoned him over. I want you to watch with me. She patted the empty side of the rock she was sitting on. Come sit here. On Mui's star, being able to sit with royalty was the highest honor. As a princess, Lan Shi's actions could be called the pinnacle of courtesy. However, she didn't understand that in Xiaqing's eyes, her behavior had a completely different interpretation. Lan Shi relies on me too much. Even just watching a sunset she wants me to accompany her, how can this continue in the future? I'm just a passerby in her life. She still needs to learn to walk her own path ahead. I'll let it go today since she was just insulted and abandoned. But in a few days I should still find an opportunity to tactfully bring it up. Xiaqing was already thinking about how to phrase things when he would talk to Lan Shi about this. But his thoughts were interrupted by Lan Shi's voice. Xiaqing. Lan Shi looked at Xiaqing with that extremely deceptive, charming face. Her round eyes were innocent yet moist, encompassing bewitching allure and innocent purity all at once. Then, in a very sincere tone, she praised. You're so good. I really like you. Lan Shi was telling the truth. She did admire Xiaqing greatly and she liked him a lot. She had already decided that after completely conquering Earth, she would keep Xiaqing on as Earth's acting administrator to become her capable subordinate. Over the past few days Lan Shi had read many Earth books on management. She knew that for a leader to make subordinates convinced and devoted, besides being exceptionally capable and providing ample benefits, there was also the matter of moving their hearts and connecting with them emotionally, expressing sincere recognition directly and unambiguously showing appreciation. This was exactly what Lan Shi was doing. However, the management books also said that leaders must not only make empty promises and verbal praises to subordinates. Concrete actions must be taken as well to demonstrate things. Actions to express affection. Xiaqing didn't like that kind of comforting at night. He said before that kisses and hugs were also ways of showing affection. So that must be the method he prefers. Considering she had already firmly conquered Xiaqing and their relationship was clearly no longer ordinary, plus such kissing and hugging seemed quite common in Earth's conquest relationships, Lan Shi had even seen embracing and kissing couples on the big streets, she contemplated and felt kissing and hugging was appropriate without risking problems. That settled it then. She would respect Xiaqing and act according to what he liked. No sooner said than done, Lan Shi resolutely grabbed Xiaqing's hand and pulled his whole person towards her. Then she forcefully made him face her and, under his astonished gaze, leaned in decisively to kiss his lips. After Lan Shi kissed him, she immediately sensed Xiaqing's change, his whole body stiffened and his eyes were wide open. Weren't those kissing couples on the streets enjoying it? Was her method of kissing incorrect? Or... Lan Shi carefully recalled before realizing her mistake. It seemed when others kissed, they didn't just briefly touch. There needed to be deeper entry, even gnawing while embracing and using tongues. She pondered then decided to follow suit, pressing Xiaqing's shoulders to stop his resistance. Recalling how other couples kissed and embraced, she started to kiss Xiaqing. But this time, not only did Xiaqing not show rapture, he became even more taut. It was as if he had just escaped from death as he sprang up and looked at Lan Shi in sheer disbelief. He subconsciously retreated several steps back. Lan Shi watched as he panted slightly, warning her, "Don't come over. Things weren't supposed to develop this way. Shouldn't people be kissing and embracing tighter the more they did it? Did I do something wrong?" Lan Shi felt a little embarrassed. "Then come over and we can try again. More practice will make it better." "No need for more practice." Xiaqing's face held a lingering horrified expression as he glared severely at Lan Shi. "Just what are you doing again?" Lan Shi was totally bemused. "Kissing you. What kind of new trick is this? Your new way of comforting me?" "It's not comforting this time but expressing affection," Lan Shi helpfully explained. "Didn't you say this is how affection can be expressed?" Xiaqing bit his lips, looking extremely emotionally charged. This wasn't wrong either. After all, Lan Shi had read in the Earthling Conquest Guide before that when kissed, Earth people often experienced emotional upheavals like accelerated heart rate and hurried breathing, representing their excitement and elation. For a noble and elegant princess like herself to bestow a kiss, the fact that Xiaqing didn't immediately become overjoyed to ascension and only panted roughly showed his steadfast heart. It demonstrated outstanding moldable talent that could achieve great things in the future. Expressing affection? So are you saying that as long as you want to express affection, you're prepared to kiss anyone like this? Unfortunately, Xiaqing seemed to explode with anger at her words this time. "Have you kissed this many people before?" "No." Lan Shi felt quite aggrieved. As a princess, she wasn't someone who would kiss just anybody. Besides, such methods weren't even popular on Mui's star. However, she could understand Xiaqing's feelings to some degree. After all, there were also often incidents of ministers competing for favor in the Mui star court. As an Earth person valued by herself, Xiaqing clearly still wanted even more exclusive status. But jealousy of the worthy and able was unacceptable. "Right now, I've only kissed you," Lan Shi cleared her throat, feeling she should make an appropriate reminder to avoid management difficulties arising in the future. "But considering my status, it's unlikely I would only ever kiss you in the future, right? You should prepare mentally." Yet as soon as she said this, Xiaqing looked about to erupt. He stared at Lan Shi in disbelief. "You're already adding liability disclaimers? Besides, what about your status? Didn't we agree you wouldn't do things like before? Why would you still need to kiss many people?" Xiaqing didn't give Lan Shi a chance to retort, directly laying down the law in a tone that brooked no dissent, no more randomly kissing others in the future. He cast an unfriendly look Lan Shi's way. "No more randomly kissing me either. I'll let it slide this time and not hold it against you, but don't let there be a next time." Xiaqing pondered briefly before adding in an unnatural tone, "But let's pretend this never happened." "It never happened that I kissed you," Xiaqing seemed to be summarizing. "My first kiss is still intact. But absolutely don't do something like this again in the future." Verbally expressing affection is fine I guess, but no touchy-feely business, got it? She didn't quite understand the logic here, but she obediently nodded. After all, Xiaqing could be considered an exceptionally reliable Earth person. Occasional petulance and tantrums could be understood. From his slightly flushed cheeks and rapid heartbeat, her words of admiration and affection were at least accepted. One of the tenets of management was that for some attitudes, making your point then stopping when it takes effect was best. It looked like for actions, Xiaqing prefers verbal praises and honeyed words expressing admiration. She hurriedly made a mental note and decided that on the ride back, she would put it into practice, not only to further strengthen the conquering relationship, but also to carefully win over Xiaqing's heart from the inside out. The sunset on Earth was beautiful, but beauty is always fleeting. In a short while, the sun completely hid behind the hills and forests. All the tired birds returned to their nests as the sky darkened and the mountain wind grew stronger. Faint rumbles of thunder already echoed through the vast valley, and the rain that had already shown enough courtesy also arrived late. Soon, it started to drizzle down. Although somewhat reluctant, Shi still followed Xiaqing down the mountain. This time Xiaqing finally believed Shi's words and brought an umbrella. The rain this time was not heavy. Shi held the umbrella and took a rain walk with Xiaqing. She actually felt a different sense of taste and even hoped the road would go on forever so she could keep walking with Xiaqing like this. No wonder Xiaqing used to love taking walks in the rain. However, when they were halfway down, Shi felt hungry. Wan Yan had told her she didn't need to bring anything and that they would prepare ingredients and have a nice camping picnic. But they didn't even get to camp in the end. Shi was left behind by Wei Yijuan and hadn't eaten anything for half a day after hiking and walking. Her energy was almost depleted. When they finally reached the parking lot, Shi couldn't hold it anymore. Xiaqing, I'm starving. She was still deliberating on what words to use to coax Xiaqing into taking her for a meal. But she heard Xiaqing casually say, "What do you want to eat?" Shi's eyes lit up. "Anything's fine?" "Yeah." "Then I want to eat buffet." "Which one?" "Anywhere." Xiaqing took out his phone and looked at several famous hotel buffet restaurants nearby, picking one and asking, "Huaxing Hotel Buffet, is that okay?" Although Shi had said anywhere was fine, Xiaqing still asked for her opinion in line with his gentlemanly principles. However, Shi, who had just said anywhere was fine, now showed a difficult expression and awkwardly said, "Can we go somewhere else?" Xiaqing didn't get annoyed. After all, once they drove back downtown, there were many buffet restaurants with good reviews in several commercial districts. Then, Ran Hotel Buffet? Not this one either. Let's go somewhere else. To Xiaqing's surprise, after he had gone through and named a dozen buffet restaurants, Shi, who had said anywhere was fine, didn't like any of them. "Why are none of these okay?" Facing Xiaqing's questioning, Shi hemmed and hawed at first. Later she just kept quiet and looked at him pitifully. Xiaqing felt there was nothing more to say. Read lat stchers on n/v/l/b.i.cm. Never mind, what was the point of arguing with Shi? She was a pitiful person herself. Not only did she have a tragic background and was coveted by others, but she also had autism and was clueless about normal social relationships. The troubles could only increase a bit. Xiaqing sighed and looked for restaurants further out in other commercial districts. What about Nan Lin Hotel? Is that okay? Nan Lin Hotel was far from the mainstream commercial district. It was relatively less crowded. It was also the only old 7-star restaurant in Rong City. Therefore, its food was more upscale, with prices that stood out from the rest. Indeed, this time Shi did not refuse again. Instead, her eyes shone brightly with excitement as she repeatedly said, this one is good." Xiaqing felt somewhat speechless. Now he knew that this Shi was just picking the expensive ones. But it was understandable. According to Shi's income, she normally would not be able to casually dine at such restaurants. The lesson of the bill being put on his tab last time must have taught her to behave. Now that Xiaqing had taken the initiative to pay, she must be trying to cunningly follow him to some nice places and leave some beautiful memories behind, which was normal. As Xiaqing drove, he involuntarily thought of Shi's bold confession and actions at sunset earlier. Shi did have huge obstacles in social relationships. She did not know how to convey her feelings tactfully at all. Even Xiaqing, who was somewhat mentally prepared for her behavioral patterns, had to admit he was quite startled. It wasn't that no one had confessed to him before, but really no one had done it in such a reckless, direct way like Lan Shi. Normally, it would be somewhat offensive, but considering that Lan Shi was clueless about interpersonal relationships and clearly harbored deep affection for him in her heart, Xiaqing decided to forgive her this once. Fortunately, Lan Shi had been very well behaved after going down the mountain under his guidance. Through his education, she did not have any more extreme behavior. However, her inner love for him seemed uncontrollable. As Xiaqing drove, he listened to Lan Shi praise him all the way. From your shoulders are so wide and you have so much hair to your eyelashes are so long. You look so good in this outfit, I really admire your sitting posture. Although some compliments were clearly far-fetched and preposterous, considering it was Lan Shi, Xiaqing felt it was acceptable. After all, what tactful compliments could you expect from someone with the social skills of an elementary schooler? Children don't know how to hide their feelings, so they just say it straight out. But that's better because it's more honest. After all, these were all words from her heart. Besides, right now, as Lan Shi looked at him with eyes full of passion and spoke those blunt words. Xiaqing, you're so good. Can you take me out for buffets again next time? She really has no experience with fine things. She was so excited just because he took her to a buffet. It showed that the men she usually interacted with, apart from coveting her beauty, were completely undeserving. It was quite pitiful indeed. It wasn't a big requirement anyway, just a meal. Xiaqing nodded. As expected, Lan Shi revealed a deeply moved expression, prompting Xiaqing to remind her, it's just a meal. Don't treat it like some great favor. In the future when facing things like this, you have to react more calmly. He glanced at Lan Shi's face then averted his gaze. Moreover, looking like you do, if you really want to, you will naturally not lack people willing to treat you to meals in the future. Don't reveal your emotions so easily every time. If you meet an improper man, you'll just play into their hands. You have to accept favors from men as a matter of course. Of course, you can come ask me whether the man is good or bad. Lan Shi seemed to take the lesson to heart, like she was earnestly remembering it down. Only then did Xiaqing breathe a sigh of relief. However, just when Xiaqing felt things were back on track, Lan Shi struck him with another heavy blow. This blow happened after they entered the buffet restaurant. Xiaqing knew the restaurant's dishes were exceptionally high-end, but he watched Lan Shi, who had already cleaned 10 plates, still feeling somewhat shocked. Lan Shi was very happy today. She felt medicines suited to the disease indeed worked well. She had praised Xiaqing all the way, so he brought her to such a nice restaurant. A large part of the Mui Star people's energy came from food. The more aristocratic one was, the more energy one could store. On Earth, in layman's terms, that was equivalent to a larger appetite. Of course, on Mui Star, energy supplements only came in nutritional fluids, but Earth was different and had all kinds of delicious food. Lan Shi excitedly ate more than 10 plates. She loved crab claws the most. She would rush over like the wind whenever a waiter brought over a large plate of crab claws, filling up her entire plate. However, even so, the efficiency was still somewhat low. In the end, Lan Shi thought about it and decided she might as well go all out. As soon as the waiter brought over a new whole plate of crab claws, Lan Shi simply hugged the entire plateful and walked away. Miss, this is... Not only was Xiaqing shocked, but the restaurant staff were also clearly stunned. It seemed they only recovered from the shock when Lan Shi carried away 2 large plates of crab claws and sashimi in both hands. Some staff came to Lan Shi's side with awkward expressions and kindly reminded her, our restaurant owner is very particular about not wasting food. So if there are too many leftover dishes in your buffet plate, you may be charged extra. Lan Shi felt wronged. I won't waste it. I can finish them. She looked up at the staff. It's not even enough. You'll bring more after I finish eating these, right? This was what Lan Shi said and indeed what Lan Shi did. Xiaqing gaped at her as she emptied 3 newly served plates of crab legs in what seemed like a blink of an eye. Before he and Lan Shi, piles of empty plates were already stacked high on their table. Her appalling appetite had thrown the restaurant into disarray as servers frantically tried to replenish the buffet spread that Lan Shi had cleared out. They were so busy that they did not even have time to clear the empty plates. At first, when Lan Shi had just 5 empty plates stacked in front of her, Xiaqing still tried to dissuade her. When there were 10 plates, he struggled in vain to salvage the situation. But now with some 20 to 30 plates stacked up, Xiaqing was numb to it all and had given up. He felt an urge to bury his face in that stack of plates, that way he could hide from the stares coming from all directions. The only comfort was that there were not many diners in the restaurant. Xiaqing did not even dare pick up his chopsticks anymore. He felt that Lan Shi had already eaten enough food for 200 people with the money for two. If he continued eating with her, it would be criminal. Lan Shi was truly an eating machine. How could she eat so much? She ate with her head down throughout, not even talking to Xiaqing. Seeing her gnawing chicken wings, Xiaqing did not know how to react. After making rounds devouring plates of seafood and steaks, Lan Shi helped herself to piles of desserts again, clearing the restaurant like a swarm of locusts. In Lan Shi's wake, no food survived. In his days, Xiaqing felt as if he did not bring Lan Shi alone for the meal but an entire tour group. As a self-preservation mechanism, when Xiaqing walked numbly out of the restaurant later, he felt as if he had buried all memories from 10 minutes ago. But dead memories often come back to life to haunt you. As Xiaqing started the car, he could not help but recall the probing, animal-gazing look the server gave him when he went to pay the bill. In fact, Xiaqing frequented this restaurant a lot. He loved the ambience and the food. But looking at things now, he could never dine at this restaurant again. Just as he thought this, as if reading his mind, Lan Shi heaved a regretful sigh. I guess we can't come to this restaurant again. Despite the earlier embarrassment, at least she seemed to be slightly self-aware with what she just said. So you know it's shameful too? Xiaqing could not help but prod. Couldn't you have behaved more gracefully just now? Was it necessary to make sure we can never show our faces here again? He wanted Lan Shi to know that even if the food was delicious but unavailable in the future, it was not necessary to binge eat this way. He could always bring her here for another meal, there was no need to eat like there was no tomorrow. But to Xiaqing's bafflement, Lan Shi threw him a look. I'm not ashamed at all, why should I be? Xiaqing was flabbergasted. You ate so much, how are you not ashamed? I'm not, Lan Shi shook her head righteously. The essence of buffets is to eat as much as you can, isn't it? I was just following the rules. You're so shameless. Then why do you feel we can't come back again? Because I'd probably be blacklisted, Lan Shi grinned. I have extensive experience. She glanced at Xiaqing and added proudly, extensive experience being blacklisted by buffet restaurants. Lan Shi then heaved a regretful sigh. Usually after eating at a buffet restaurant once, if I try going back again, they won't let me in. A few unsavory thoughts crossed Xiaqing's mind. So that's why when I suggested other buffet restaurants, you didn't want to go. It was because. Lan Shi nodded. Yup, because I've already eaten at those restaurants once. And got blacklisted? Yup, Lan Shi said indignantly. Anyway, if I try going back a second time, they won't let me in. Xiaqing did not know what else to say. He recalled the list of buffet restaurant names Lan Shi had rejected when he suggested them, feeling extremely shocked. So you brought calamity to every buffet restaurant around here? Thinking about the number of restaurants he had named, Xiaqing could not help but be in awe for a moment. Do you spend your entire salary on food? Nope. Lan Shi refused to admit defeat. I save a lot of money too. Xiaqing had only casually asked. But hearing Lan Shi's reply, he became serious. So where does your meal money come from? Is it men treating you to meals? With Lan Shi's looks, it was natural that men would offer her free meals. But acting so foolishly, what if she got tricked into something for a free buffet meal? That was Xiaqing's main concern. Sure enough, as expected, after some thought, Lan Shi nodded. Different men? Yup. Xiaqing's expression darkened. Oblivious to Xiaqing's unhappiness, Lan Shi was rather proud. They took the initiative to treat me, it was free. Some things others take the initiative to offer may not really be free. Haven't you heard this saying before? Gifts of fate are destined to be costly, free lunches don't fall from the sky. After treating you to buffet meals, did they make other requests? Nope. Upholding a factual attitude, Lan Shi replied honestly, except for the free buffet meals, they didn't have any other requests, really. She thought hard to ensure no details were missed, mainly after eating at a restaurant. When I try going back again, the manager, strangely always a man, would enthusiastically come out looking very awkward. He'd apologetically tell me that his restaurant can no longer accommodate me for buffet meals. But as an expression of regret, he would give me a voucher for another restaurant's buffet meal for me. Please kindly accept our invitation to dine at this other restaurant, that was how they always put it. Xia Qing was taken aback. With slightly furrowed brows, he looked at Lan Shi. What you mean is, they gave you buffet vouchers for other restaurants? Yup. If not for the vouchers they gave me, I wouldn't even have known there were so many buffet restaurants in Rung City. As for the trap you mentioned, nope. At first I also wondered if the vouchers were fake, but when I used them, I could eat for real. Speaking of this, Lan Shi grew excited, and after eating at another restaurant, when I try going back again, their manager would also come out and give me a buffet voucher for yet another restaurant. Xia Qing finally understood. He understood very clearly now. But when are we going for another buffet meal? Another meal? Absolutely no more meals ever again. Oblivious to Xia Qing's thoughts, Lan Shi was still basking in her post-meal elation. The rush of energy just now would keep her going for days. She ambled lazily behind Xia Qing towards his car in the parking lot. As this restaurant was not located downtown but in a more secluded area, and also more costly than others, customer traffic was sparse with just a handful of equally costly luxury cars parked sporadically in the lot. Lan Shi had been sauntering cockily, feeling invincible with her filled tummy brimming with energy. That is, until she spotted a flash of yellowish-white fur darting out suddenly from behind a pillar in the parking lot. Oh my god! As the people of Earth say, always be vigilant and humble. Who would have thought that the arch-nemesis would appear just when she was feeling smug and invincible earlier? Scared stiff, Lan Shi nearly leapt 3 feet into the air. Help! Could anyone tell her why on earth there would be cats here? Based on Wang Jiqiang's description, Earth cats were extremely frightening. Masquerading in an adorable guise, their combat abilities were still unmatched. To achieve their aims, they could cling onto you for days or nights. As princess of the Mui planet, she could not lose to the arch-nemesis like this on Earth. Therefore, when encountering the nemesis, first take cover, then order an Earthling to battle on the front line, in the bid to drain the nemesis' energy, buying time for herself to observe weaknesses before launching an annihilating strike. If Xia Qing was to valiantly sacrifice himself in this battle, Lan Shi agonized, she would definitely confer him a posthumous honor. Lan Shi thought this way and rushed towards Xia Qing, who was in front of her. Xia Qing walked with effort, trying to restrain his emotions. He felt that the drama tonight had already reached its peak. Since they were already full from the meal, they should see this through to the end and send her back to the employee dormitory. Xia Qing decided to handle Lan Shi in a professional manner, then hurry home to sleep. Other than learning how to ingratiate herself and act entitled, Lan Shi didn't learn anything else. The buffet incident reminded Xia Qing again that he should set clear boundaries and keep his distance, which was more appropriate. For this reason, Xia Qing quickened his pace slightly, non-intentionally slowing down to wait for Lan Shi walking behind him. He walked in the empty parking lot with Lan Shi slowly following behind him. However, when they were close to his car, Lan Shi, who was sauntering behind him earlier, suddenly rushed forward. Before Xia Qing could react, she hugged him tightly, extremely afraid and nervous as she buried herself in Xia Qing's embrace. Xia Qing was shocked, but soon after, his emotions became very complicated, especially when Lan Shi's furry head was pressed so warmly against his chest. What was she afraid of? Other than an orange cat that had walked by them proudly meowing earlier, there was nothing else in the parking lot. Shortly after, though, Xia Qing understood the answer to this question. She must be afraid that he would leave. Oh dear. Xia Qing knew that Lan Shi most likely didn't have the cunning to deliberately act this way. She lacked social awareness and a sense of propriety. Therefore, her actions now in hugging him were simply acting on impulse like a child. However, this further revealed her dependence on him. After he had driven over to pick her up when she was abandoned and patiently took her to eat at the buffet, the warm Xia Qing showed Lan Shi, who seldom received warmth without any motives previously, had greatly moved her. This was why she showed such strong reluctance to part with him in a hug before leaving. Xia Qing should have pushed her away, but when he thought about Lan Shi's painful life experiences, he felt a little pity for her. She definitely didn't want to separate from him. She definitely needed him too much. But of course that was impossible. He had to send her back to the dormitory immediately. Xia Qing even felt that in the future, he should still keep a certain distance. However, tonight, Xia Qing thought that he would make an exception to allow this pitiful person to hug him for a little longer tonight. After all, this was a kind of magnanimous act of charity. According to the plan, Wan Yin anxiously waited at home. Wei Yijun called her earlier than she had imagined. Almost as soon as she picked up the phone, Wang Yan eagerly asked about the results of the day's plan. Did it work out? Did you follow her? Doesn't she have any true feelings for Xiaqing at all? It didn't work out. I don't know if she has true feelings for Xiaqing either, but you have to pay me more money. Wei Yijuan's voice on the other end of the line sounded very excited and angry. Wang Yan was a little surprised, but as Wei Yijuan continued to vent non-stop, Wang Yan's expression became more and more uncontrollable. Is there something wrong with her? She beat up the extras so badly. I'm uploading the photos and videos to you now. It's all clearly recorded in the in-car surveillance. I just came back from the hospital and I can also send you the medical report. Take a look at what she did to them. That's not normal human strength. And she's a pervert. It was so hot that day. She asked me to set up a tent and then take it down, set it up and take it down again. I almost got heat stroke. I took off a jacket and this psycho didn't allow me to take it off. She threatened me with force that I had to keep wearing it. If I didn't leave, I could have died too. Wei Yijuan had an endless stream of grievances. In short, this woman, no matter if she has true feelings for Xiaqing or not, you don't need to worry about it. Because no normal man will like her. At most, some might play with her because she's pretty. But anyone sane wouldn't want to date a woman like this. 2 words, mentally ill. After hanging up the phone, Wang Yan was still a little incredulous. She seemed quite clever at work and was even able to collect a difficult overdue account. Wang Yan didn't expect her to be so eccentric socially? No, that's not possible. With her ability to cling to Xiaqing, she can't be an idiot who doesn't understand social skills. So was this a case of hiding clumsiness to prevail? Playing the pig to eat the tiger? In Wang Yan's daily analysis and observation, she felt that Shi would not be difficult to deal with. However, this time even Wei Yijuan's loyalty test failed. This was beyond Wang Yan's imagination. It seems Shi is quite skilled, keenly seeing through Wei Yijuan's approach, and used this crazy tactic of playing stupid to make Wei Yijuan and the extras fail completely. She is clearly not easy to deal with. You can't go head-to-head with such a master. Wang Yan thought carefully and decided to first clear her relationship with Wei Yijuan, which would reduce Shi's guard against her and suspicion. Then she would pretend to be Shi's friend to get close to her. At the same time, she would look for opportunities to covertly tell on Shi to Xiaqing several times. This Shi is more cunning than Wang Yan thought. She must warn Xiaqing not to fall into her trap. Read lat.stchers on n/v/l/b.i.cm. Shi felt more and more at home on Earth. The dangerous moment last night was finally relieved under Xiaqing's protection, and the crisis passed. After work, Wang Yan was also the first to come over and apologize for Wei Yijuan's actions. You can never really know a person. I didn't know he was that kind of person. Probably to show her remorse, in addition to scolding Wei Yijuan and making it clear that she was drawing a line between them, Wang Yan voluntarily took on all the complicated data analysis work after getting to work. She actively snatched tasks from Shi to complete them. She also attentively brought Shi snacks, milk tea, and all kinds of service, allowing Shi to experience the low-end version of princess treatment in the workplace on Earth once again. Xiaqing was equally satisfied. Seeing the recent report on Xiaqing that Shi submitted, his eyebrows couldn't help but curl up smugly. His nephew, who had always placed work at the center of his life, had recently frequently gone out with Shi, and it wasn't for work driving to pick her up, or taking her out to eat at buffet restaurants. These things may be normal for others, but very abnormal for Xiaqing. For a workaholic like Xiaqing, this could almost be considered crazy with desire. An outstanding talent is different after all. Xiaqing put down his phone with satisfaction and lamented his wisdom to his wife again. You see, this Shi is beautiful and smart. She knows how to handle things. With just her looks, she has Xiaqing so obsessed that his work is starting to slip while he indulges in romance, whining and dining this woman. Outstanding. Truly outstanding. The key is that Shi is willing to put in effort. She knows how to use a honey trap. He patted his thigh in frustration. Why didn't I think to find a beautiful female assistant to infiltrate before? Of course, same-sex repulsion makes it difficult. That explains why those male assistants were driven away early on. I should give her a good bonus. What Xiaqing didn't know was that at the same time, Shi, who he believed to be extremely smart, was racking her brains to answer test questions. She was constantly watched by Xia Cheng's terrifying gaze as she reluctantly studied. It was time again for the weekly interpersonal relationship training. Lan Shi bit her pen and felt powerless and weak in the face of Earth culture. Xia Cheng stared at the test paper she had just completed. His frown was almost detached from his entire face. So after I talked for half an hour with a dry mouth, this is what you produce? I see you have good absorption when eating, so why is it indigestion when it comes to this? I've been studying for an hour already. Can I take a break to eat something? I'm a little hungry. No. Xia Cheng ruthlessly rejected Lan Shi's request. You have to finish studying in one go before taking a break. I talked about 5 points just now. Did you understand? Any other questions? If you think I'm wrong somewhere you can also point it out. If you can point out a problem I'll let you eat. Yes. Lan Shi raised her hand. Xia Cheng's expression eased slightly. Being able to ask questions meant she was at least thinking and digesting seriously, so she wasn't a complete lost cause. But before he could express his limited praise to Lan Shi, he heard her shout in a commanding tone. You didn't talk about 5 points just now, it was 6 points. So can I eat now? Xia Cheng was truly fed up. He had never seen anyone as unteachable as Lan Shi. He took yogurt out of the refrigerator and decided ignorance was bliss. Go ahead and eat on the road. The driver is waiting for you at the estate entrance. Ever since deciding to keep a certain distance from Lan Shi, Xia Cheng no longer took her home himself, preferring to let the driver work overtime. He still decided to have the driver take her back. After Lan Shi left, Xia Cheng collapsed onto the sofa as if deflated. His body wasn't tired but his mind was. He suddenly understood why his cooperative partners, usually ruthless in business, would rage like thunder when tutoring their own children, even having heart attacks and needing emergency surgery. Xia Cheng felt teaching Lan Shi was just as painful. With a frown and pursed lips, he continued screening resumes for behavioral intervention therapists for autism, determined to cherish his life and stay away from Lan Shi. But his hopes were quickly shattered. 5 minutes later, Xia Cheng received a call from Lan Shi. Lan Shi's voice sounded like she was crying but she still pretended to remain calm. She urged in a commanding tone. Xia Cheng, hurry up and come over. There's something very scary here that needs to be dealt with. Hurry, super urgent. Very scary stuff. Only you can handle it. Well, that's all for this part, truckers. See you in the next video.